Hello, everyone, and welcome to Phoenix Gaming. I am your host, Nick Henning, and today I'm doing something that we've never done on this channel before. We have all three Earth finalists together to talk about the Earth final game. If you are looking to get better at Earth, there is no place in the world, I think, that you're going to get more knowledge than you are in this video right now. Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm sitting in seat 3, but we've got PJ in seat 1.
Hello, I'm PJ. First runner-up, seat 1. Second best board gamer in Earth, on Earth, I think is fair to say, for this video. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, give my thoughts, and basically cope in live about why this game went the way it did. But yeah, happy to be here.
Group therapy session. Damien
Yeah,
is in seat
essentially.
2.
Yeah, Damien here, over in Salt Lake. Came in third, but I think I played a lot better than my cards allowed me to. So happy to input some commentary where the live commentary kind of missed out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's kick off by talking about some of these starting cards before we even lay into the game. What do you guys want to start with?
Well, I do recall when we actually were looking at the starting setup live. Nick, you said that you were looking at those starting cards and you were not a big fan of them,
I remember
whatsoever.
That.
Yeah. What did you not like about these starting animals?
So is it the hummingbird, the one with the colors?
Yes, that's the color one.
Yep.
So is it called the hummingbird? What's it actually called?
I think it's ruby-throated hummingbird, I want to say.
All right, well, I'm trying to find it so I can pull it up. But
that one, sorry, I don't think the fauna cards are actually in the folder.
Okay, great. Well, we're not going to show it, but in the top right, you can see maybe in that blurry screen the ruby-throated hummingbird, which is a card that rewards you for, I believe, having 3 cards that are colorful cards, which I think is the italics text, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
I don't love. They're not my most hated card. My most hated card is the frog card, the tree frog card. But I don't like the ones that are like the italics cards, the bold cards, the underline cards, because as a game that has a fair amount of variance off of the deck already, that specific goal just irritates me. And we're going to see how I eat my own words in the course of this game about that goal. But that was the thing that I was most annoyed about in the card setup at the beginning.
Yeah, so there's that one, which, like you said, very feast or famine on that one. You're basically at the whim of the deck. You got, I believe it's Atlantic Puffin, which is cards that have an even victory point cost in them, which is going to be a lot of lands, because a lot of lands tend to cost 0. And then you got I think it's called the Rhinoceros Beagle.
Puffin's not cost, right? It's victory points?
No, it's VP. It's VP, sorry. Lands have even VP costs very often, because there's a lot of lands that give you points that have 0 VPs. So that's like a factor going into that.
It also
and then you have the
rewards players who plant a lot, right? Like is it 10? I think it's 10 different even cards. Yeah. So if you have a lot of cards in play, like the race to getting there is very real.
Yeah. But let's be real, almost every fauna card rewards players who plant a lot.
Yeah,
there's there's a couple where that's maybe not true. We actually have one of them in this game.
Yeah, we do have one of them, that's right.
Yeah, in the bottom right, we have the Condor, which rewards you for having 20 plus cards in your hand, which in a 3-player game, surprisingly difficult to make that happen, I think. Just because, like we said, you want to be planting and dumping cards out of your hand as much as possible. And we'll see if that one even gets claimed at any point during the game.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What do you guys think about Condor? I think it leads to some interesting different games, actually.
I like it. One critique of Earth is definitely that it can feel very samey if you're just mashing the plant button all the time. But there are some fauna cards out there like Condor or Mole that do kind of incentivize different strategies. Mole's not here, but you get it if you have 20 or more soil, I think. Some amount of soil, yeah. So oftentimes in Mole games, everyone just goes red immediately, and you really lean heavily into the red action, get that out of the way, and then it just turns into a turbo plant fest. But I do like cards like that in Condor because they can mix things up.
Yeah. And then in the bottom left, we have a beetle of some sort. Does anyone know what kind of beetle that is?
Rhinoceros beetle or something like that.
Beetle, which
Rhinoceros
is
beetle.
wants many habitats, right? It wants your cards to have two
or more.
habitats. Yep. And I think one thing that's interesting about both the Rhino Beetle and the Atlantic Puffin is that they, for me, actually make a mild difference in terms of my starting cards. I don't know if you guys care about this at all, but I actually pay attention to that.
I did, yeah. It almost made me flip a card, but the powers on them, I just could not justify it. So I took away one of my rhinoceros options in order to get a better power on my island.
Totally.
Yeah.
And
for me, when it comes to
no, go.
For me, when it comes to like starting islands, I typically, if there's one that's just way stronger than the other, I'll towards that, even if it doesn't necessarily like follow the fauna. But in this case, we'll talk about it, but I got two pretty mediocre ones, so I just went with the one that did lean more into the starting animal setup.
Yeah, it's called the climate card, the one that the middle one.
The middle one, yes.
The middle one called the climate card. The climate card, I like don't generally care that much about the power, and I try to just make it match as many of the objectives as possible, which absolutely made my decision in this game in terms of what I was choosing. We also have two end game goals here that are, of course, unreadable from the camera here because everything in Earth looks exactly the same because they're all plants. I remember the one that I cared the most about, which was every column wants different types of fauna in the column. So diverse columns, which I think is one of the easier ones to match. Like it's a tax that what I mean by that is that like if you're newer to the game, it's very easy to like make a mistake on this. And I think the more experience you have where you're like, oh nope, I just constantly need to keep in mind that like this column is going to be diverse. But it's a nice, in my opinion, easy way to scoop up 12, 18, 24 points.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, in my mind, the ecosystems that give you 24 points are almost always the best ecosystems to go for. Some of them, like the growth one and the cube one, are very game dependent on whether or not you think you could work. But the ones that like give you points for having same color, different color, or like same habitat, different habitat, those ones are all, in my opinion, like S tier ecosystems to like get, essentially. Like they're very strong.
We are all sharing them, so it like makes it so that like it's more about like calling it S tier is interesting, right? We're all playing an S tier end game scoring goal. Do you remember the name of this one, by the way? Because they all look the same to me.
Something mountains.
All right, I'll see if I can pull it to show our.
It's Mebelling Mountain. MBEL. Yeah, Mebelling, something like that.
And our other end game score.
Let's see.
Well, I'm finding this.
Is that the odd and even one? Is that what that was?
That was the No, I had the even victory point as my personal one.
That's right. You had that one. What was that bottom one?
I am not remembering that off the top of my head here.
Let me show.
We must have cared about it, right?
Definitely care about it. Care about everything, right? Like the goal is to care about every goal in this game. That is what makes a person playing this game well. Okay, well, I'm not quite sure why my screen's not cooperating, but here we're talking about it. Mebelling Mountain. Does anyone know where this is?
I can't read the name of it, but it's points for every 2 cards that have 4 or more victory points.
4 or more. Oh, yeah. This is a cool one. Yes. I actually really like this. I don't remember which one it is, but
I want to say it's like, is it Iriadi? No, that's different VPs.
I'll try to find it to show it. But the reason I like
this
one
is
that I think that Earth rewards like playing lots of cheap things quickly, and so I like when any of the objectives reward you for doing something a little bit slower. Is it the New Guinea rainforest? Is that? Let's show this. I think this might be it. This one?
Yes, it's that one.
Yeah, let's go.
I believe.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, this is something that it's an interesting one. It will make me consider a few cards a little bit more than I normally would. So cards like, I'm going to say like a class of cards that costs like 4 soil and is worth 4 victory points are cards that I would in most games not really consider playing. I'd rather be playing your 2 soil 0 cost cards than a 4 soil 4 cost card. But this card actually pushes me a little bit more towards those 4 4s rather than the 2 zeros. And it makes me look at cards that I wouldn't normally consider in a game of Earth, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sure you would have loved my opening hand then, because it was it was all expensive flora with like 1 or 2 exceptions.
I mean, that is the other reason I like this card, right? Is because when you have a bad opening hand and a card like this rewards cards that you normally would say are bad, you're like, all right, this sucks, but at least everything is worth 2.5 more points, right?
Yeah. Sucks a little less. Still sucks though.
A little less. Okay, cool. Let's kick off the video. Let's start. PJ, you're seat 1, so you're laying out your islands here.
Yes.
Talk about your starting stuff.
All right. So my starting island here was, let's see, it was the double-sided 2 draw ones for cards. So the first side is La Palma, which gives you 2 card draw if you choose the blue action, and then the other side is Meta Shoal, which gives you 2 card draw if you choose the red action. And Meta Shoal is the one that I ended up going with here. That paired with my climate card, which was, let me see if I can find the name of it, Semi-Arid.
Okay.
So I forget what the other side of Semi-Arid is, but I ended up choosing this ecosystem mostly just based off of the starting like fauna out there, because it had 2 habitats and had an even amount of VP, which I wanted for the 2 like animals that required it. Neither side of this climate card was particularly exciting to me, and there was like some synergy with like I incentivized to choose red for the card draw. I could get some extra growth out of it. I think normally doing that is a trap, but like I was basically stuck between 2 mediocre options, so it felt like the better one to just like go all in on red if I need to. And what's kind of nice about Meta Shoal is that it has a bit of a fallback plan to it. It draws more cards than La Palma does. Well, you get like 1 extra card essentially, with a bit less soil, which kind of sucks. But it makes taking red as your first action like pretty decent, because you also get to like take 2 extra cards. So if you do have a pretty bad opening hand like I ended up with, then you do have red as like a fallback, and odds are other people aren't going to get as much advantage off of your red card. So that's why I went with that. I would have traded my climate for most other climates, I think, because I think the one I got was relatively bad, all things considered. And then for my ecosystem, you can't see it, but it was 2-sided. It was either, I believe one side is Macmillan Park, yes. It was either Macmillan Park, so you could pull that up now, or it was going to be the cheap one. Let's see, where is it? It wasn't Atacama.
So Macmillan Park rewards you for playing expensive stuff. Interesting with the fact that we have a goal that rewards you for playing stuff worth a lot of victory points, which there is a correlation with.
Yes, and then the other side is Great Basin Desert, which basically rewards you for playing stuff that is cheap, costing 3 or less soil. You get like extra bonus cards there, or bonus points there. So this was an interesting decision I had to make at the start of the game, because there's like arguments that could be made either way. On the one hand, the bottom ecosystem, the one that rewards more VPs, like you said, Nick, like that one definitely leans towards the other side here, where you want to play more expensive cards, because generally speaking, the more expensive cards are going to get you to 4 VPs more often. But Great Basin Desert rewards what's typically better like Earth gameplay, which is just getting cheap cards out early on. And it also arguably has more synergy with things like the Puffin and the Rhinoceros Beetle, because you want to be mashing out cards as much as you can in the early game. So if things go to plan, Great Basin is probably better. But if you're forced to like slow down and play expensive cards, then I would say Macmillan is probably better. Yeah. So I ended up going with Great Basin side. I think it's still the correct decision. Even in retrospect, knowing that I would have gone an extra couple points if I'd gone the other side, I still think this would have been the better choice.
I see very few worlds in where I don't choose Great Basin over the other one. Unless you got to see your starting hand and maybe make some decisions from there. But in a vacuum, I can't not see taking this card.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's I will probably make an ecosystem tier list. I think that one is like C tier or D tier. Like, sure. I think it's pretty bad. I think I definitely got the worst of the ecosystems, which we'll see.
Yeah. Ecosystems, I had no complaints. The other stuff I maybe did complain about. Damien, I think I'm gonna have to move your face for a second so that we can see yours here. So we see yours coming out into play. I felt like your island was the best of our islands to start off with.
Yeah. So yeah, Kunashir is the name of it. Very powerful. Every time you play a cold climate card, you get 2 cubes. So you're constantly, anytime you're planting, what I see is income. I don't treat cubes as victory points. They are things to spend. You'll see it a lot this game, but I spend cubes out the wazoo for soil. So yeah, it also allows me to draw 8 cards. I get to see more. The flip side of that was 3 less cards, but I'd get like 6 more points. So I traded out 6 points and a qualifier for the Rhinoceros Beetle to get more visibility up front and economy throughout the game, which is definitely worth it, I think. Yeah, my climate was also not great. The flip side of mine was a blue action that let me spend a cube to get 3 growth tokens, which as a climate card I think is low. You don't want to be spending cubes for growth. Early game, you need economy early game. So I flipped to this side, which doesn't provide that, but it does provide an even victory point and the 2+ climates for the 2 fauna cards.
Yeah, the double match does feel well worth it.
Yeah. The climate card you played was Mediterranean Cold Summer, by the way, if you want to
thank you.
Nick. Yes.
I did remember what it does, but yeah, I didn't remember the name of it and didn't have it in front of me here. But yeah, it synergized with the Puffin. It wanted me to get points for having, I think it's 4 points for every 3 cards that are even. Numbers might be a little off there, but it synergized with the Puffin, so may as well.
Yeah, I like this. You're saying you don't like this climate. I actually do like this climate on this setup. It does put you at the whim of the deck, of course, of like whether you're going to get the even cards. But I like, as we're going to see in a minute, matching up my ecosystem goal to like any other goal in the game. So the fact that this said do even things and the beetle says do even things. When I looked at the starting setup, I was like, oh my God, Damien is crushing us just from the initial setup here. It seemed pretty good.
One thing I will say, though, about the ecosystem you had, Damien, is that's probably my least favorite ecosystem in the game, purely from the perspective of every time I go odd, I only get even cards. And every time I go even, I only get odd cards. Like that card feels like it burns me every single time.
Yeah,
but it's pretty solid in terms of like scoring points, and like you said, lines up perfectly with one of the objectives. So very good ecosystem to get, all things considered.
Yeah.
All right, and then we've got this handsome gentleman explaining his starting setup. I also don't think that I loved most of my starting setup. I have Hawaii or Kauai or something like that as my island? Hawaii. It is properly Hawaii.
Yes.
Which gives me also cubes when I play mountains, basically, which is a good power, as we just discussed with Damien's. It is a good power. In comparison to Damien's, though, it's a little bit less in terms of starting resources for a few more victory points, which at the beginning of the game is like not worth the trade-off at all. So it feels a step behind. PJ, I know that you like hate Hawaii. Is there a reason that this is like really at the bottom of your list?
Yeah, so the thing about every like island card is that there's one good side and one bad side for like almost all of them, except for the one I got. You get 2 mediocre sides essentially. But Hawaii, the good side is like the worst of all of the good sides because 5 cards, only getting to draw 5 cards is awful. There's so low odds of you getting like a good hand. And then if you do get a good hand, guess what? You have to like compost 2 of them.
Yep.
So you're only stuck with 3 opening cards in your hand. So that's super limiting in like the early game.
Yeah, and it's sitting as third seat. If PJ had played, we'll see this in a minute, but if PJ planted and then I planted, you've only got 3 cards to choose from to plant, and you'll be hosed if you don't see anything good.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, when we could talk about it when we get into it, but my starting hand, I looked at it and I was like, I'm in big trouble because my stuff was not cheap to start off with. I started drawing sick in the middle of the game, but my opening hand was not exciting. My climate, on the other hand, I think is decent for this setup. I don't know exactly which one this is, but I think it is get rid of a
Subtropical Highland
cards. Subtropical. It matched nicely with the objectives, the Puffiny stuff and the Rhino Beetle stuff. But also allows me to draw more cards when we take yellow actions, which is normally fine and respectable, but in a game with Andy and Condor in play, just like threatens my opponents of, if you're taking the yellow action, I'm also drawing 4 cards this turn. So puts me in a really nice position. That's a nice, like, it's defensive and also allows me to just be like, all right, cool, I'm going to jam cards and suddenly draw 6 at a time. So some really nice flexibility there. And then I don't remember the names of my ecosystem ones, but it is to double down on hating variants from this deck. I said, you know what? This rewards me. It's 9 points for every 2 italics cards. And I saw it matches it matches the hummingbird in play. The other side is the bold one, which I think is regions or something, or like geography or something like that. I don't know what the percentages are in the deck. I don't know if they're any different, but I said, you know what? Like
14.
Are they similar for both of them?
They're the same for all of the italics, bolded, and the underlined. They're all, I think, 14.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I just said I'm going to double down on this goal. I'm going to try to get as many colorful cards as possible. Meet this objective I want to anyway. I'll play, and this to me also mitigates the sometimes like, am I supposed to play this like really awful card that's like an italics card because it works towards this objective? Now the answer is yes. If it's a horrible card, it costs way too much for what it does. I don't care because the number of extra victory points it gives me is like out of this world. So this fits in very much with my philosophy of like, we're here. There's one place that we're playing for at this final table. It is first place. I might as well lean into it. So kind of a mixed bag for my starting set here. And it does really end up depending on like how the card draws go throughout the course of the game.
I do have some thoughts about your climate card, I will say. Yeah. So if you watch the finals like live when they're commentating, they make a big deal talking about my shrine because I mentioned it in like the pregame interview. But basically what I did was to try to channel good juju during the semis and finals. I took all the good cards out of the deck and I tried to like just will them into existence in my opening hand essentially. And Nick, the climate card you got is, in my opinion, the only S tier climate in the game.
Ooh, that's
interesting.
I think Subtropical Highland is insane.
Okay.
Because getting access to early card draw and such good early card draw, I think is cracked. Like if I see that in my hand, I take it even if it doesn't synergize with the fauna most of the time. Because I think just having access to that many good options, like if you think about how impactful the cards in Earth are, if you get a good early green ability, that can like set you up so nicely for like the next several rounds. So maximizing card draw and doing it off of yellow actions, suddenly you're not drawing 2 cards on someone else's yellow action, you're drawing 4. Yeah. And it's very good. Yeah. I would say this is the best. I think only the red ones that give you like soil for compost or cubes for compost are even in the same ballpark. Like I think the one you got's insane, especially because there's the Condor out this game. But
yeah, duly noted. I haven't like gone through and like rated the climates, but it did feel like it was good and the right choice. Like I do think my climate card was the best of the things that I had there. I don't like doubling down on an objective, but I don't like bifurcating my objectives, so it felt like a non-choice. And to be clear to everybody who's watching, we despite all 3 of us agreeing we would rather play advanced, we did play standard this game because those are the tournament rules. Which means that we just got the 1 island 2 choices, 1 climate 2 choices, the 1 ecosystem 2 choices. So, we're just limited to the front and back of our cards and try to make the best of what we could with that stuff. So it's something I know all three of us are in agreement here that we'd rather a little bit more flexibility at the beginning.
Yeah. Earth is RNG prone enough as it is. Like, give us some more options, man. So we have the ability to make correct decisions.
Yeah. And it doesn't, I don't think that it slows down the beginning of the game too much to give people slightly more options here. And so right off the bat, I'm dealing you 4 cards, 2 of which are going to your compost and 2 of which are going into your hand because you're leading with a red action as first seat here.
Yeah, so to give you an idea of my opening hand, I believe my opening hand was like, I want to say 2 cheap plant cards, a bunch of expensive ones, like all 4 cost or more, and then like 2 events that were pretty unplayable. One was like Earthquake, which you lose a bunch of cubes but get a bunch of compost. Cool. That's not going to come into play like at all for this game. And then I think I got like a Tropical Storm one, which is like you lose growth to get cubes or something like that. Or actually, I think it may have been the other way around. It was losing cubes to gain growth, and I was like, there's no point keeping that. So my opening hand was not good. I could have planted, but then unless I got something that cost basically like 0 soil, I don't think I would have been able to plant if Damien had gone.
Yep.
And going into the final, I was kind of thinking I don't want to make risky plays, especially not on the very first action. And since neither of you guys played a red climate, red was relatively like still pretty good for me. I would get some extra cards in my hand, get extra chances at drawing the nuts. And since I had expensive cards, it would let me like basically play those out.
Yeah.
One card you could pull up, sorry, Nick, is Gray Reindeer Lichen, which, because it has gray in the name, does fulfill that hummingbird objective. And the ability is quite good. It gives you like 3 soil whenever the red action is taken, which is kind of nice because that also combos with like what I naturally want to go for. So taking the extra soil early on with the idea of being able to get that out at some point isn't terrible. Normally that card's too expensive to play, but in this position, it was like still a good play to go for, I think.
For some reason I'm struggling to find Gray Reindeer Lichen, but it's a 6 cost red card that gives you a pile. I think it's 3 soil every time someone takes the red action. So it makes the red action just absolutely nuts.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it might just not be here. Which obviously like really nice for the setup. I like this leading play of a red here. Like you're up 3 soil, 2 cards. Like this is the advantage of going first, that like, yeah, you didn't get to plant, but because of the way that you set up your starting cards, this is still a really good leading play. Damien and I did the boring and obvious choice of taking 2 soil with our follow-up actions. There's not much else to discuss there, I think.
Yeah.
And then Damien, you took a plant action here.
Yep. So PJ was nice enough to give me some more soil. I didn't exactly need it, but or I think I did actually. As start of the 6, I did need it. So that allowed me to get my 8 soil for Herwan Muli and the European white birch. So allowed me to, I saw PJ had red actions all over his board. I need to get on that red engine train so that if red gets chosen again, I actually get some income coming in. So yeah, the white birch, adds into that color, starts pushing that, so it forces you guys to maybe start playing cards that maybe you don't want to play to keep up with the race. Both of them are even, so they're going for the puffins. Great. Only one of them's going for the rhino, but I think the white birch went for the colors, so it went for 2 of the 3 that were pushing for that. Yeah, and this Herwan Muli, getting a lot of economy out of this. It looks kind of weird, but you're essentially every 2 soil you're getting a free victory point out of it, or 2 soil turns into 2 soil turns into 2 plus a victory point.
Exactly.
So you're constantly getting up, and it's a rainbow. So it's constantly firing off.
Is that like the soil turns into 4/3 of a soil, so you're always increasing a third of a soil, but it doesn't matter what action is being taken. So it's not amazing, but it always fires. This one has 2 objectives. It's even. It's like 4 or more. Like, this hits so many victory point conditions. This isn't a card I generally consider to play early, but actually I think was an absolute workhorse for you throughout the course of this game. So huge respect for recognizing the strength of it. What was the name of your other card, by the way, you played?
European White Birch.
Okay.
So yeah, that allowed me to compost a card from my hand to get more soil. So even more economy coming in, plus that color.
Yeah, and leaning into that red thing at the beginning. I had exactly the same thought as you, which is that PJ's going to be jamming red. I don't want to be stuck in the dirt here. Of my starting cards, the card that I'll play here is the one that I think is the absolute best of the cards. You'll see it in a minute, but I don't remember the name of anything, but it is a red card that allows me to draw a card every time red action is triggered, which is important because I don't love my starting hand. That drawing cards at the beginning of the game is just like so absolutely crucial. So for me, it allows me to have kind of, I viewed it as a defensive play at the time, honestly.
Yeah.
It had a color in it, though, I believe. I think it was Wintergreen Barbary, I want to say. Was that it?
Let's see. Wintergreen. I mean,
it does let you draw a card.
Wintergreen. Yep. And it's a color. I'm the best. So good at this game. This is the card that I'm going to end up playing here. And I would play this card even if it didn't have the color in it, to be clear. So it having the color in it is a cherry on top. It's a little expensive, 3 for its effect, but I don't love my hand. I need access to some more cards. I know red is going to be triggered throughout the course of this game, so it's a completely respectable starting card. We didn't mention this, by the way, with Damien's plant, but I do want to point out that he got 4 soil off of his card from that, which allows him to immediately convert that into more cash. Or sorry, not 4 soil, 4
sprouts. 4 cubes, yeah.
Both of them are winter.
Yeah, which gives you the defense of the opposite of what PJ's problem was, right? PJ said that if I plant on the first turn and I don't draw into a 0, I'm screwed. And Damien, you don't have that concern. You spent a lot of money to start the game, right? Spending 8 on your first plant is more than I normally want to spend. But you have defense against anybody playing the plant action after you.
Exactly. Yep.
Which, of course, I immediately snapped doing. We didn't even talk about what PJ's card was. PJ, do you remember what you played?
Let's see. Looking at that,
it's like a yellow. Gain 2 cubes.
Is that soybean? Oh, did I play that early? It might have been soybean.
Okay.
I don't recall. It was probably a card with a color in it. Yeah, I don't recall what that card is, but I can look for it.
It's basically he gets some yellow cubes.
That is doggrass, is what that is.
Doggrass, gotcha. Yeah, just 2 cubes, which not really exciting. Trying to recall exactly why I played that there.
Yeah, because it doesn't go for the rhinoceros, and it looks like it. I can't tell how many points it is.
Yeah, why did I play that at that point? Honestly, I can't remember. But it was probably
too, but
yeah, it was probably one of the only cheap cards in my hand.
Because I had originally
you were going to go yellow.
Taking yellow after Damien. I was like, great, no one has yellow cards. I'm going to jam yellow. I'm going to draw 6 cards because I don't like my starting hand. It's going to put me in a position to make choices. And then when you played that, I was like, this feels a little bit worse. And so instead, I decided to go with this, play out the rest of my starting hand, which is a discount on playing the
sun, I think.
The ones that are like the little weed symbols, the grass guys that are the weed symbols.
Oh, herbs.
Herbs, yeah. Let's me play herbs.
Yeah.
And then I play the red card. I think that's the red card that scores. No, that's a mulching one.
It's a clamshell orchid. Is that
clamshell?
I know, because I kept looking at that card during the game. I was like, every time I take red, I'm giving Nick more soil.
Yeah. So clamshell orchid in this case is, to me, basically red, get 1 extra soil, But it is also even. It is also 4. It is also two objectives. So it hits a lot of the objectives. This is not a card I love to play at the beginning of the game. 3 cost for +1 soil when people take the red action. I don't generally want to be composting cards out of my hand at the beginning of the game. But in this game, because it rewarded the doubles, the evens, the 4 at the end of the game, I was like, okay, I don't have a ton of options. I'm actually only paying 1 for this because of my terrain. Suddenly, this card that I don't love playing that often became the choice that I was going
to pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, if I had a color in it, that was like the only way it could have gone better, honestly. Had everything else going for it.
That'll come later.
Yeah.
But again, it's this playing defense on the red thing here. And then PJ comes out with the gray reindeer lichen that we were talking about earlier. Sorry that I'm not able to find the image. Oh, there it is. I don't know why.
It's gray with an E, not with an A. That might have been it.
Either the British way or the English way. I don't know what the correct
one of them. Yeah. So I had a tough call. I remember, I think I had the option to go 2 cheap cards here or play gray reindeer lichen. So I was thinking about what I was going to do on my next turn. And I didn't love my odds of planting on my next turn. I had either 1 or 2 cheap cards, and I would have been relatively low on soil if I had gone for that. And I'm looking over at Damien, and Damien has the backup cubes. And I want to say you had some soil at this point. I don't recall how much. It's kind of hard to say, or to see. So I was kind of weighing my odds of, if I go for plant, how likely am I going to get screwed by like the guy after me also going plant?
Yep.
So I ended up planting gray reindeer lichen. It fulfills the objective, and it'll give me a rebate on the red action that I take next. Taking red twice in a row at the start of the game feels really bad because you lose out on so much like planting tempo. But I was playing it safe instead of like risking it for the biscuit, which arguably maybe I should have done at this point, but it was still early on and no one seemed to be significantly ahead at this point.
I like it.
But yeah.
It puts your economy out of this world. You draw a couple extra cards when you take the red action. I don't think it's bad. I don't think you need to rush in this game. I think there is time to catch up in the mid game. So I actually respect it. Damien, what card did you play here?
This is Clay Soil. So we were actually making fun of this because I played it after I had already played a tree, which I would have gotten a discount on. But I drew that during my plant action. So I didn't actually have it in my starting hand. But yeah, 2 costs for 9 points is very good. And then it synergizes with the Rhino Beetle. Unfortunately, not even, so it doesn't work with the bird or my personal eco, but getting the 9 points for 2 soil is really nice. And then if I plant more trees later on, they're cheaper.
Yeah, I think
the odds came out with a vengeance this game.
Yeah. I think
as is with eco. Yeah,
exactly.
Sorry.
I think these 2 cost 9 point cards are just like nuts. Like every time I get them, I want to play them.
Oh, and then it's also cold, so I'm getting more sprouts back. So yeah.
So it is awkward that you have to end up playing it in this sequence, but nonetheless, it's just good value. It's not that expensive for you. You pay some sprouts, you're back into 3 sprouts here, so you're safe if PJ chooses the plant action here. But as PJ's saying, he's a little bit concerned about what's going to happen in the aftermath. And, I do think in the long run, PJ's advantage on red here, like both Damien and I have like played red cards so that we're not just like totally choked, but even still, like this red action where PJ is getting 8 soil, 2 cards is just, it's a big step ahead of what Damien, you and I are doing at this stage in the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
it's
Damien,
a big early step, but the cost is longevity.
Yeah, exactly. So then, if you're ahead in soil, like PJ is now, then the question is like, can you then step this later in the game or in the mid game into like doing a couple plants to catch up? Because at this stage, we have 3, you have 2. Mm-hmm. It's not like that's a huge difference. It is a 1 action difference. However, you did just pass the turn order marker, right? And so it does depend on what Damien and I do in the next 2 actions in terms of how ahead or behind you're feeling. If the both of us are looking at our hands and we don't take plant this round, you're basically in the same boat. The only thing that's risky about this is that if we do take plant, all of a sudden one of us has 5 to your 3, and then you're starting to feel like I need to play a little bit more catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my turn to pick next action, and my tempo has fallen flat. I don't have any more cards in my hand that I want to play. Maybe I have one, but it's kind of sitting in the back. I've only got my cubes, so I'm kind of forced to play the cards action this turn, which kind of sucks because, as Nick said, he's got that climate that he's got to draw even more cards, so I'm kind of feeding into that, but I need more cards. I need more options. It's just not working with me, so
yeah, nothing to plant this turn.
I maybe had 1 or 2 cards, but they were not like they would maybe hit one of the fauna objectives. Some of them even like they'd hit nothing, or they'd have like terrible engines that I'm like, I don't need growth tokens. I need something better. So.
And Nick over there is sitting on a lot of soil, so if you plant and you don't get a good draw, you're probably in the same position I was just in. So it makes sense.
And I'll say I recognize that. After the first turn, when Damien planted on round 1, he put down 2 relatively expensive cards. Good cards, but expensive cards. And PJ, you put down an expensive card that like wouldn't be my leading card. I was like, oh, okay. They have expensive stuff. I have expensive stuff. Everybody, this is a slow start to this game. And so because it's a slow start to this game, you guys are either going to be card choked or cash choked if I plant on my first action. Like sometimes the hardest thing about going third in a 3-player game is that we're talking about what you guys are saying, where it's like, if I plant and the next player plants, I might be in trouble. And normally when you're in third seat, that's the feeling you have. But actually in this game, I didn't have that because I looked at the cards that you guys played and I said, oh, all right, I'm pretty safe. Short of them like ripping something sick off the top, I can push this, and I have a little bit of space here, but it's not going to be like PJ plants and then Damien plants. Like you're not both going to get lucky at the same time. One of you might, and I'm still safe if that's the case.
Yeah. Normally going third, I think in a 3-player game of Earth is pretty rough because oftentimes the first 2 players do take the plant action. But in part because we didn't have much option in our starting islands, me and Nick got probably the 2 worst starting islands, I would say. Nick had the worst, in my opinion. I had like the second worst. Damien was the only one who got like a even like remotely good island, in my opinion. So, yeah, we all had,
I think the funniest thing about this too, right, is didn't they say that they selected of the islands that were the most winning islands in the tournament? And so there's something very, very funny about the like the like sub selection bias of like a couple islands that ended up winning these games and them being like considered the best islands, and PJ and I are over here like, we hate our islands. Can I have any of these?
I think what they did was they took like all of the islands, and then they took 3 or 5 of the most winning islands and 3 or 5 of the lowest winning islands, took them out of the pool, and then they gave us one of the remainders.
So we had the middle.
So it was something in the middle.
That makes way more sense. That makes way more sense. I thought Hawaii was
that annoys me.
A hot tournament.
Well, the thing is, like with Hawaii, I got it my first round, so I had to win with that shit island. And then because of that, it came back like in the finals because someone put in wins on it. So I'm like, I don't know. Their system was like a little flawed, I think, but it was like an okay.
I'll be honest though, I thought that the tournament as a whole ran better than I thought I was going to. I thought the whole like synchronous asynchronous thing was going to be a nightmare, and it was actually just fine.
For sure.
You see it right here, right? Damien took the cards action. It passed to me. I was like, I draw 2, compost, draw 2. We just passed it to PJ. He's like, draw 2, place 2 cubes. I'm done. Like it actually moved much snappier than I thought it would with this like everyone play one at a time thing.
Yeah. When I first heard 4-hour blocks, I was terrified because I worried that every single player would just be constantly adding up points, like mentally. Like, okay, Nick's got 112 points, PJ's got 100 points, Damien's got 98 points. Like, I was worried about that kind of stuff happening.
Sure.
But yeah, it doesn't really make that much sense to do it, honestly, in Earth. So
it's a trap in this game to like count other players' points. I think like the right play almost never cares about the points that other players have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I mean, that's a part of the design of this game that can we actually see my cards here? No, not really. Way too blurry.
Nope.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gets passed back to me. Like, we have cash. I just drew extra cards. It's sort of a no-brainer. I think PJ, literally just said, yeah, plant obvious or something like that. When I took the plant action here.
Yeah, I mean, PJ just did red. I just did draw. You have the perfect opportunity to
set up for it. And my starting hand that was, as sus, like with an extra 6 cards, actually really 10 cards, you could argue, because when I took the plant action, I draw 4 and choose my favorite. All of a sudden I've drawn into something that I think is like, okay, this is cool. I've got some plans that I can make happen with this.
Mm-hmm.
I still haven't drawn any of the like nuts cards, and I actually want to point out that not a single one of us has played a green card up until this point.
Yeah, I did not see one until about halfway through the game, and I saw 3 in the same draw, and the game was like 60-70% over, and I'm like, oh sure, now they show up, and I just don't have the opportunity to plant or play them. So
here I do the opening salvo of a green card. This is the worst of the green cards, in my opinion. Not the card itself, but the effect, the get a growth. I think that the green cards that give soil, that give the 2 cubes, are like nuts. Draw a card, they're nuts.
Draw a card is huge.
Agreed. Yeah. I would say I would say the mushroom one is probably the worst. The mushroom one is the one that lets you compost 2 cards from your hand.
Oh, sure.
Which in this game, that's pretty bad. Like in particular, because you want to keep cards in your hand. But yeah, I would say outside of that, like the growth ones are generally not great, but getting growth for free is like kind of nice, because growth is the hardest thing to get naturally.
Totally, because people are wary of taking the yellow actions. It doesn't develop their economy. It just gives them more options, and so you don't get to take that many growths. This isn't a game that rewards having growths. In the games where they have like those end game goals that say you need growths, then suddenly those green growth cards like become nuts. But in this case, it's like, this is nice. It's incidental. That actually one in particular rewards me for having the herbs next to it, and I have discount on herbs, so that's pretty exciting.
If you see my tableau, I was actually setting up for that card. So when I saw Nick play it, I was just like, oh yeah, great. Nick has the card I wanted. Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of card setup, one of the things I goofed on a little bit, I don't think it ended up mattering, but I had a tree and an herb right next to each other. I should have put them on top of each other in a column. But I got so many herbs that I wanted to play throughout the game, it ended up not mattering because I got another herb in that column anyway. But definitely something I completely forgot about.
The 4 diverse column thing. So you'll see most of us playing up and down, which is not for any aesthetic preference. It's because we're just saying, I want to finish this. I want to finish this and know that it's done, and be good at it. So it makes a lot of sense there.
Yep. Here you see me taking half an hour to decide, do I want to put the card in the spot where it obviously goes? I do.
What are you?
I was very tired at this point. Yeah. I wasn't really debating anything. It was more so like I was just mentally checking, because it was a long day like of Earth, and I was kind of like, we were all, I'm sure, somewhat mentally gassed. So that was just like, am I making any stupid decisions here? Like just reviewing like the animals, the ecosystems, because there's a lot going on in Earth, and it's really easy to like overlook something even temporarily. But no, I knew that card was going to go there. Yeah. So no, it was mostly just making sure I wasn't missing something obvious. Like when I put that there.
And now you've moved into yellow action is very good for you, which I didn't hate seeing with my climate card, my S tier climate card. But it obviously means that you're kind of boxing into like, you're pretty good at red, you're pretty good at yellow. And so that I think puts a little bit of a choke on the rest of us. Damien, you play on the terrain card. Is that the one that discounted winter stuff or mountain stuff?
Rocks. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's called solidified magma if you care. But again, I even joked about this, like, oh, I had already played 2 rocks that I could have got discounts on. Well, I didn't have that hand card at the time, but yeah, not my favorite card because it does have odd again, so that's 2 odd in a row that I'm not working towards that puffin, but at least I'm working towards the beetle.
One thing kind of worth considering. Oh, sorry, I keep cutting you off.
You're good.
Sorry. One thing I was going to say is because the ecosystem that has like the different habitats or the different types of cards in a column, one thing that I think about a lot in games like this is where are my lands going? Because lands are some of the most like high value cards you can play. And in this game, there's like kind of an artificial cap on having more than 4.
Yeah.
Because you would be giving up that 6-point bonus on one of the columns doing so. So I'm very like reluctant to play like some like cheap like kind of tempo lands in games like this because I'm locking myself out of like some more heavily point scoring like opportunity lands, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I like it though. If you haven't drawn into the green ones of my in any given game of Earth, I'm going to expect to play 1 or 2 high value terrain cards at the end of the game. And so I like playing the 2 tempo guys at the beginning, having like knowing that you haven't drawn any of the green cards. And we keep talking about the green cards. Can you guys just briefly explain for our viewers like why the green cards are nuts and why we're like harping on them?
Yeah, so planting is by far the best action you can take in the game, and green is the ability that pairs with that. So if you look at pretty much any game of Earth, you'll find that planting is taken by far the most, probably at least 6 or 7 times more than the other colors if you are playing a relatively high level game of Earth. So the green abilities not only like give you the most advantage just because they proc the most, but they can also give you critical resources like soil or cubes that you can use to keep the tempo going so that if someone else does plant, you're able to still keep up with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I actually did this beforehand, but we took the plant action 11 times, soil 4, cards 2, and sprouts 1. So it kind of shows you that those cards are going to trigger 2 to 3 times more often than the other cards. So yeah,
wow,
they are
11, 4, 2, 1, 15 actions taken. That is a short game.
Yeah.
Yep. And we'll see in a minute, but it really should have been 11, 3, 2, 2. But I made a big goof.
Oh, your soil?
Yeah. I think it's in a couple of turns, but yeah.
So
right now we're on PJ.
The reddish corky which
fungus.
Is your third italics already at the beginning of the game. So not great cards, but they coordinate really well with this objective. So you claim an early 15 points here. I like this card just fine. It's even. It hits like this is actually really, really good. It's good for victory points. It's not good for economy, but it's still worth playing early because it does a lot. This card is an absolute workhorse card. I would play this in almost any game, and in this game it hits like 3 of the 4 objectives.
Yeah,
for sure.
And we didn't talk about the last one I played, but White Oak, the one that lets me draw 2 yellow cards, that was like one of my best draws in that game, in part because it was another color, but also because yellow was going to be a very contested action, and getting 2 card draw on yellow like is incredibly good. White Oak is one of the few like 3 or 4 cost cards that I think is almost always worth playing if you think that yellow is going to be taken at all, just because getting extra cards in your hand can be like so important.
Yeah, this single card boxed me out of taking yellow a lot this game, actually. Changed my strategy, maybe for the better, so no complaints, but it definitely warped what I was doing. PJ, I couldn't quite see it. What was your card that you played at the bottom, your 5th card? It's some
I
kind
also
of terrain
can't see
card.
it here.
Oh, I think it's the terrain card that lets you mulch cards from your hand. The replace guy.
Oh, yes. That was the replace red card. Yeah. That card I was not excited to play, but I think I had to play it there because if someone else took like a plant action, I did have a card that could go there. I wasn't excited about it, but it was something that I could do. And I think it fulfilled both of the even and the multiple habitat ones. So it was pretty good, even without using the green ability.
And it's cheap, right? It costs 1, and it basically lets you play a red card in the future for free. So I think those replace cards are always great. They keep showing Extinct Volcano, even though none of us took it in this game. I think they thought that we had Extinct Volcano, and no one ever did.
Yeah. So that was my girlfriend's fault, unfortunately. Sorry, I'm putting her on blast here a little bit. But someone mentioned that I think you got volcanic soil or something, Nick, and someone saw it. So they mistook volcanic soil for Extinct Volcano, and that's why the card kept coming up. So
Got it. Okay. All right, Damien, what was your 5th card?
So I was not excited to play this card, and this is really where it started to go downhill for me. So I played B-Bomb. So it was only 2 costs because it had rock on it, but yeah, it wasn't going towards the rhinoceros beetle. It wasn't going for the penguin or the bird, not the penguin. So yeah, it gave me again a little bit more economy to get some more soil on any action, but yeah, that completely lost tempo on going for the fauna board.
Yeah, that's a pretty miserable play. I think it was a reflection of the fact that your card draw this game was just miserable, right? Like you didn't have any cards, didn't have a way to get more cards. You know, you took the yellow action to draw the 4 cards, and it clearly didn't draw you in anything super exciting. So a bit stymied in that way. I played something yellow. I think it was just I saw that PJ was like, it's like the card I didn't really care about. I just saw that PJ was like building up, and it was a yellow card that I could afford. I actually don't even remember which one it is. Some kind of mushroom thing.
So here, Damien, you're taking the red action.
Yeah, this was my big red action. Yeah. I should have taken blue. So for those of you wondering, you might think that the red action is a soil action. It is not. You get more soil by taking the blue action. Trading in 6 cubes, you get 4 soil. Paired with the 2 you already get, you get 6 soil for that. You only get 5 for the red. So I think I personally got 1 more soil taking the red, but both Nick and PJ had really good red engines that I think had I taken a blue action, I think Nick had some soil banked and he could probably plant, but yeah, PJ, I think you were like completely out and you would have really only had the 2. But since I chose red, you got the soil from the red action plus the 3 soil from your 1 flora card, and yeah, it was just big blunder. And I believe I even talked about it before the game. Somebody had earlier in the day played against me. They took the red action, but I had the same situation where like that's great. I'm getting a bunch of soil. They could have done blue. They had a bunch of blue engine cards, and they just didn't do it.
I'm not trying to rub salt in the wound, but I see this mistake happen once every 2 games I play online. I'm not exaggerating. People think red is the only way to get money, and they're wrong. Like they see other players taking red and being richer than them, and then they're like, oh, I have to take red too to catch up. And what they do is they just put those players with the red cards in play further and further ahead of them. And it's clear that, Damien, that's not what you were thinking in this instance. Just kind of like we've played this game for 10 hours straight and, had like a little bit of a brain fart moment. You see that you have more red cards in play than blue cards. It makes sense. But the problem is that the number of red cards Damien has in play are fewer than the number of red cards that PJ and I have in play. So that means that even though he's not good at blue, he's better at blue than the 2 of us. And that's the, small little stumble here that gives PJ and myself just a little, it gives me an extra card. It gives us a little bit of extra soil that is going to, I think, catch up to Damien in the long run here. So yeah, not trying to rub salt in the wound, but trying to teach people that these are important lessons to learn. This is the yellow card I end up playing, by the way, which is mostly even 2 habitats. Again, it's not a card that I'm like super excited to play, but if we have yellows, I have growth icons now because of my pasture. So it's making me money too. So this is just kind of if PJ is going to draw a gazillion cards off of white oak, I at least get some money along the way as well. Yeah. So I just continue playing defense on yellow here.
It's also probably worth talking about like what's the priority order when you are selecting cards to essentially like go into the board. Because for me, when I'm basically at this stage in the game, I'm thinking, okay, which faunas can I realistically get first place in? Because there's a big point differential between like first place and like third place, for example. Like that's a 7-point like swing. So getting first on as many as possible is really what you want to be thinking about. And in a 3-player game, you want to try to get 2, maybe 3 if it's feasible. So I honestly prioritize like even a bad engine card or like a mediocre engine card. If it has the stuff needed for the fauna, I would go for it. Like even over a good engine card at this point. Yeah.
And that is exactly what my game plan is here, right? Like, and I think that I draw into more of the cards that do this than you guys do, which is like mediocre cards that have even victory points and 2 objectives. And I'm just like, great, I'm just going to jam a bunch of these mediocre cards that hit 2 of these objectives in play, which is why you see me again taking the plant action on my turn. The card that I drew here, Volcanic Soil, it's not Extinct Volcano, which I think PJ and I don't know if you agree, Damien, but I think PJ and I agree it's the best card in the game.
Second best for me.
Soil, oh, okay, fair enough. Puts me playing this card, drawing this card, and playing this. I was like, I am in the driver's seat. This is the point in the game where I'm like, this is now my game to lose, because if there was a problem I was going to have in this game, it was being out of money, because both of you guys were better at getting soil than I was. And this card says, it's pretty cheap. Have a bunch of extra soil for planting me. I think this card is busted. I don't think it belongs in the game at all. And it meets multiple objectives in this game. Like it does so much dirty stuff here.
Yeah.
And then there goes Red Graham. Pain.
Is that the one that I drew right there? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Let me show the volcanic. Oh, it's called Volcanic Grounds, not Volcanic Soil. But here's the card I'm talking about. It's 6 soil, not 4 soil. But it's even. Yeah, it does everything. This is huge. The card that I was like, I'm like a mile ahead at this stage. It's definitely unfair. It's unfair, especially in this setup.
Yeah. Meets both animal objectives. It's even 4 points, man. Like, come on, give us a break.
It's dirty. Yeah, it's dirty.
Yeah.
This is a really good card, though. What's the name of this waterfall thing?
Tropical Forest. The one in the top, right? Yes. That was probably the best card I drew all game, I think. It was a very good card for me because I had the row of trees set up at the start. Yeah. So I was very excited to get this card, which I was feeling pretty good like when I put this card. And you put down the, like, what was it? The Volcanic Grounds. I still felt like I was in it with a winning shot because I think in a vacuum, I would say that Tropical Forest is better than Volcanic Grounds. The next card you play kills me when we get to that.
Yeah, no, I agree that in a vacuum, Tropical Forest is better than Volcanic Grounds. For me, the reason that it puts me so far ahead in the situation is because I knew that soil was my choke point. And so it solved my choke point for me. But, so would Tropical Forest, right? Like, it would be completely fine to draw this. And I didn't have the same setup that you did for this. Look, it's an advertisement for the game we're playing.
Abundance.
Yeah, and then I actually didn't see the second card that I played. It was some other yellow mediocre card that achieved exactly what I was talking about before, multiple objectives. It's like even scoring. It's not a card that I'm excited to play, but it's just pushing towards moving the game forward, pushing towards getting me towards those fauna cards. Damien, do you know what card you end up playing here?
Not sure.
Okay.
If I see it on the board here.
Is this Torgrass?
It might be.
Oh, yeah.
Torgrass. It looks like it. Yep, Torgrass. So yeah, again, not super happy with it. It's another odd. So my fourth odd in a row that it at least has the 2 biomes, gets me some economy back. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
just kind of clearly showing that it's kind of showing that I'm not happy with my hand.
Totally.
I'm struggling to get anything that matches at least 2, where Nick's getting things with 3.
Yeah, exactly. 3 costs for 2 victory points versus the 5 costs for. Well, this is a little bit more tougher to evaluate because it gives you all those cubes. You do have a discount on it. You do get the 2 cubes for it being the right biome for you. So of all the times to play Torgrass, it's one of the best of them. But I like playing Torgrass in the last 2/3 of the game rather than the first
Yeah.
third or half of the game that we're in. And you're just in this position where you don't have other cards that you're excited to play.
Yep.
Part of it too, to talk about your hand, Damien, I know you showed us at the end of the game, is that, you know, you've mulched a couple cards, and most of the cards that you mulched were event cards. And so I don't know about you guys, but I, as a default rule, hate drawing event cards. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they do a lot, but like if I could choose an event card or a random non-event card, I'm going to choose a random non-event card like almost every time.
Yeah, for sure. There's the events. I don't remember exactly what they were, but there were at least 3 events early on that I drew that were like I lose points at the end of the game, and I have to spend growth and growth and sprouts, but then I gain soil and I draw some cards. So it's like I have to build up all that stuff, and I'm losing 10 to 15 points just to get some soil and draw cards. Which near the end of the game, I'm thinking maybe I should have done that because the cards I drew after like the first 3 turns sucked. So
yeah, some of those cards for reference are like Comet, Jokul Comp, like a lot of these big, these big like usually like space event cards that they do cost you a lot of VPs up front, and they're pretty miserable to play. Like, the only time you really want to play it is if you're getting like heavily out-tempoed basically on the board. And it's like a really steep sacrifice, but I think playing it in a spot like this isn't the worst thing ever. Like, especially if you think we're going to be just like planting all the time.
Right.
Yeah. You would much rather have a card like there's some like Tornado, for example, that costs some cubes and get you like a good amount of soil. Like cards like those are a lot better than like the ones that cost soil and growth. Yeah.
So heading into the third round here, I think. PJ, you've got 6. Damien, you've got 6 cards in play, and I think I have 8 cards in play, and you fire off another red action. Actually, I guess this is the 4th round of the game.
This is the action I think I regret the most, like this one right here. So I think you want to take planting as much as you can. I think the first times I took soil, I think it was probably the correct decision. This is the one I'm not sure about because I really think about this turn for a while, because on the one hand, taking red here almost basically guarantees Nick is going to finish his tableau first. Like, there's no coming back from that. I lose so much tempo in terms of like getting cards out at this point, but I just didn't. At this point, I don't think I had the cards that I needed to plant. It's always that dilemma. Like, if I plant, what's the people like after me doing? And I think if I could go back and change a single move, I think here I kind of need to risk it for the biscuit and just plant and pray. Because I think I had cards that I could do, but they weren't like, they didn't necessarily meet like all the conditions, but they were like playable cards at least.
Fine. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, they were fine. You'll see at the end of the game, I ended up having several spots open on my tableau just because Nick was able to run away with the plant action. Yeah. So here, I not only like, I give myself soil to play cards, but I give you guys soil as well to play cards. So Nick already had a bunch of soil, I think, at this point. So that made me feel a little better about taking it. But yeah, in this spot, if I didn't want to plant, or I didn't want to take red if I could feasibly plant. And it was a really tough decision whether or not I risk going for that.
Yeah. Was there consideration for taking the yellow action this turn instead of planting?
I was never taking yellow, I think. Yeah, your ecosystem, or not ecosystem, your climate really pushed me away from wanting to do yellow. And I think I didn't have great yellow options. In my mind, it was either plant or red here. I think yellow definitively gives up too much tempo, and then I don't have soil to work with. I could get like cheap cards, but I think my red engine is so good and it gives me cards that like going red here is just so much better for me than going yellow. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, and then of course Damien and I run through our reds, and we've played enough defense on red at this point that even though this is still PJ's best action, like he still takes the most money, he draws cards, like he is getting a leg up on his opponents. Neither Damien or I are walking away from this saying, oh, like we're devastated. It keeps us in cash. And like, PJ's right? He's like naming that I have a bunch of soil. I don't need soil. He's correct. I didn't need soil to plant any of the cards in my hand. I was safe from planting and probably still can plant on my next turn anyway, thanks to the volcanic grounds that I played there. But having a little bit of extra cash is always useful. Like, you're going to find a way to use it by the end of the game. You play something later on that's more expensive than you play and is worth 2 extra points. Like, you will always convert soil into cash. The idea of taking anything except for soil at this stage is pretty ridiculous. The most curious choices that I was making with reds at this stage of the game were how many cards I was composting, because I think I had upwards of 3 compostable cards, but we were playing this game of like, how many cards do you have? How many cards do you have? How many cards do you have? And it was like, there were cards I wanted to compost that were garbage cards. But it was like, am I going to flex into Condor? Because if I take the yellow action with my climate, I draw 6 cards. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like spitting distance from getting to 20 because I was sitting at 8, 9, 10 cards, something like that. So it's always like, do I compost? Do I not compost? And in this action, I made the mistake of not composting because I don't use those cards. I don't get anywhere near 20 by the end of the game because I just end up pressing the tempo with the planting. But that being said, at the time, I felt that it was important for me to like keep enough cards that if someone else took the yellow action, I was threatening getting to that 20. And so just feeling that everybody had bad cards in hand, except for me at this stage, I liked the idea of keeping the card draw low in the game. So I didn't end up mulching for that reason, which did cost me a couple points, but I think the way that it textured the game was still feels correct, I think, even in retrospect.
Yeah, I think you keeping enough cards in your hand put a lot of pressure on PJ to not compost with his green action, because he ended up with 2 different green actions that would compost. I think he didn't compost like 8 or maybe even 10 cards from that. Like, that's a lot of points, and then he was forced to wildfire into it, and it's like it was really painful for PJ.
Yeah, it ultimately cost more points than it was worth. Like, definitely something I should have considered more strongly was whether or not Condor was even worth going for, because normally for Faunas it's a no-brainer, like 15 points, but I ended up having to commit so many resources, and what I didn't think about was, by me putting myself in a position to get it, disincentivized Nick from going for the yellow action too. So card draw, we would always just be at this like awkward stalemate essentially. And you're exactly right, Nick. Part of the reason why I didn't go yellow was probably I was factoring in how many cards you had. If I go yellow, you get the fauna. Great, I'm even more cooked, right? So that was definitely like an extra step of reasoning for like why yellow was not good. And I definitely probably should have just pivoted away from trying to draw cards and just start composting them, giving up on the objective. But the other advantage to drawing cards is getting actually good cards to use, which I didn't really draw like that many like great cards throughout the game. So that was like the other factor towards just getting a bunch of cards in hand that made it okay. And then I was hoping to like draw the nuts, like Monsoon, for example, is a card that when you play it, you can compost 20 cards from your hand. And then at that point, like if you get that, it's like no big deal, right? That you have all these cards, because it just turns them into points. Yeah,
for sure. All right, I think we're at the beginning of Damien's turn here. Looks like you're trying to figure out.
And I've chosen plant.
Oh, you chose.
Yeah, and again.
Oh, you've got.
So I'm choosing to plant. I kind of have to. I need to get that tempo back towards 100%. Either the Puffin or the Rhino. I'm not doing great at either of them, but I need to get back in the game. Unfortunately, I just don't have the cards in hand to work towards it. Cloud Forest there. Again, getting towards the Rhino. Plus some growth. I get some points for the tree that I already have. I have another tree in my hand that I'm planning to put next to it. What's that other card in my hand? Oh, that was the bird's foot trefoil. Which finally I've got some card draw in the game, but it's just too late. And I'm trying to figure out where I put it. Again, I'm back to this problem of I've got too many herbs in the game, and it has to go into a new column. And one of the problems of using this board is I've stuck myself into, well, that's where everything's got to go. I could have shifted the whole board over one, put it in that new column, and had potentially a new tree next to my cloud forest. I didn't end up getting another tree, so it didn't matter. But
yeah, I had all the trees that game.
yeah, you sure did. I'm gonna go on a quick random tirade about Bird's Foot Trefoil. This is a card that when I started playing Earth, I was like, this card is great. It's +1 on red, it's +1 on blue every time. Like, that's so good. Like, 3 for 2 is an okay ratio. Like, this card is like a workhorse. It is not. It drives me up the wall. I never get to trigger it. Like, I don't have the right resources to pay for the outputs. Like, the fact that it goes in this awkward circle of wanting you to have done everything in the game is pretty miserable. Damien, fortunately, has the infrastructure to actually take advantage of this card, but I have to say that most of the time when I play this card, I hate it.
Yeah, this aside from those events that I've played, this is the only card draw card I have seen all game. So yeah, I have some growth out there, but I do eventually take a blue action later, but just too little, too late. And I think during the game I got down to like 3 cards at some point. I was just struggling.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's why I was saying earlier that. Sorry. That's why I was saying earlier that Nick's climate card is like the best one in the game because it gives you such consistent, reliable card draw. Like soil, there's so many cards that will give you soil in one form or another. There's not that many that give you card draw.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the number of times that triggered the climate was very few, but the pressure that it put on you guys to not draw cards is what I'm hearing in the course of this is actually its most powerful impact on the course of this game. Like, it didn't do that much, but it made so that if you guys were choosing to do those things, it didn't feel good. And that's like actually the challenge here, right? Is that it's putting these pressure on these other actions that are not then as exciting for you. And then if we're talking about this game where we're not drawing cards, the thing that is further advantaging me as the plant tempo player is that when you plant, you get to draw 4 cards and choose one. And so, yeah, you don't draw that many cards, but I'm drawing the best of 4 cards, which is practically as good as drawing 4 cards. Like, it's not as good, but it's not far. I actually think that if someone was trying to like fix Earth, the first thing I would do is when you take the plant action, you just draw 1 off the deck like everybody else.
Yeah, I agree. The draw 4, pick 1 is the sleeper OP part of the plant action because it also really increases your odds of not getting burned if someone else like takes plant immediately after. Like, it's too powerful. I don't know if I would do 1 off the top. I might do like draw 2, pick 1. That's like slightly better.
That'd be reasonable.
Yeah.
It's already good planting 2 when everyone else is planting 1. That's kind of my argument there. PJ plays Olive Tree here, which is it's free. It's even. It's got 2 things. It matches with this
very nice
like
card.
Nice,
very
nice
good
little
card.
Get in this situation. Yeah. I played some card that does yellow things and red things. I think again, it's just a card that does card things and has even and 2 objectives. I can't quite tell what that is from here. I can see that it has multiple habitats on it. You guys are much more familiar with your cards than I am with mine, so I'll just call myself the unprofessional here. What card is that?
Which one?
The one that's at the
common
bottom
onion
of my onion. Yeah,
that's common onion. Yes. Yeah.
Look at you knowing stuff. Here we go.
Yep.
Just a card that does things, but it's even and it's got the 2 habitats.
Yep, for sure.
Does everything it needs to.
Yeah, normally I'm not looking to play, 3 cost 2 point cards in the game, but this game, it just rewards it because of the way those fauna are. And that is, I think, PJ is saying this earlier, and actually so is Damien at a different point, but like paying attention to how your cards can match up with those fauna is a big part of the game. And it's a big part of the like bummer experience, right? That like you can have where you're like, okay, my cards aren't cooperating. So what else can I do? Actually, I'm curious, since we all played through, this is our 4th game of Earth in the day here. Did you guys end your games with full tableaus throughout the course of the day? Did you have all 16 cards in every other game you played?
All 3 of my games I finished. I was in your position
so
where I was planting every single turn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it was the same for me too. Yeah. You want to be in the driver's seat.
Story. That was only true for one game, my second game. My first and third game, I ended with 3 holes on my board, which to me is usually like you're dead. You're not winning this game.
Yeah.
But I ended up having enough other advantages, primarily through terrain cards, that put me through those rounds into the next rounds.
Yeah. Terrain cards are very good. Like we said, green abilities are amazing, but a lot of the ones that have green abilities, they also give you points through other ways. So they're super engine efficient and they're super point efficient as well.
Yep. Yeah, I do find that the advice a lot of people get, and it's not wrong, that like planting wins, just getting to plant wins, and that's what you guys are saying about your games. But not all my games in this day played like that. I'm winning this game by planting a lot, but I do think that it is viable to win this game in other ways. You can't just plant. You have to plant in such a way that agrees with the cards in play. And so that does unfortunately mean that like if multiple players are like, I'm going to be planting heavily this game, then the one who just draws better is going to crush the other players. But that's it. It is not the only thing to do. My semifinals game, actually, like my opponent literally just took the plant action every single turn of the game. And so that game was super fast. And yeah, just the problem was that his cards, he had no options. He was in the same position that Damien was in this game. Very few cards in hand because he's just constantly planting. Everything he had in his hand just went into play. And that was great in terms of ending the game and choking the other, 2 of us out in terms of our options. But the cards didn't agree with the fauna. I think he claimed 1 fauna in the game, and it wasn't enough to say, hey, that you're going to win with that, right? Like, yes, you have a full board. Yes, you have the 7 points for ending the game, but that's not enough.
Right.
Yeah. 1 fauna is rough, especially if you're the one that fills your board. Yeah. Like, that's definitely the argument against just fauna. Yeah. That's why planting is so good. Is because there's too many points you can get from the fauna board and from the ecosystems relative to other stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, I don't know about you guys, and I don't mean to sound arrogant, but this plant action was the one where I said I'm going to win this game.
Yep, I saw Red Graham come down, and I was like, it's over. We're cooked. What the hell is this card?
Here, even extra money. It's red, which I need, right? I need the italics as much as everybody else, but I need it more than everybody else because my endgame objective. And then also a card that I never play because it's just too expensive. Yellow morale, which is like not even, but I guess it's 2 habitats, but it's yellow. So I was rich enough at this stage. Like the way that the game had gone, I had so much soil. The red gram gave me extra soil that I was like, yep, I can just jam this puppy out for points. If I'm playing a card like this that costs 6, that has a pretty weak action that I think we are never going to trigger in the course of this game. Maybe I trigger this once. I am in the driver's seat. This to me was like, I was like, I'm in really good shape here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even on that yellow moral, and I think you had 1 or 2 other cards like the Lotus and stuff. That's like, you don't want to spend your growth. You're losing a lot of points on that if you activate it.
Yep, exactly. But if I needed to activate it, I had the pasture to like fire off a couple extra growths. Like that's, I was saying that I think that growths are like not the most exciting of the green actions, but in this case, it's like, well, if I need to fire off this card, I am getting some free growth, so it's a playable card. Whereas in some games, you just might never be able to fire it off.
Yeah. I remember at this point in the game,
throughout this game too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I remember. I think someone said yellow moral, or like, oh, Nick played like yellow card or something like that. I looked at the card. I was like, it's blue. Am I losing my mind? Because I was just like at that stage. I was just like, what's happening? But yeah. No. This is definitely when the feeling of defeat like started to sink in. I was like, yeah, I don't know if there's any coming back from this at this point. I needed like god draws. I set up my board to hopefully like capitalize on it. I left room for 2 cards called Lake and Forest Edge, which are points where you get 5 points for everything that is diagonally adjacent to them of a certain type. Those are some of the strongest point scoring cards in the game, because even if you match 2, 9 soil for 20 points is really good. Like, that's pretty solid. So, didn't end up drawing into them, but I was trying to get myself outs. I was also hoping for Beach, the god. Love me some Beach. Yeah.
This stage of the game, my friend was watching this game. He doesn't know how to play this game. He's never played it before. But he was like, he couldn't get a sense from the commentary whether I was ahead or not. But he was looking, he was like, PJ looks really stressed. Damien looks suppressed. I think that means Nick is winning.
Yeah.
And again, I play another card that I'm just not happy with, the Milk Cap. It's even, but doesn't go for the Rhinoceros Beetle. It has a pretty poor action, gets some growth. I mean, I know it's going to work with a future card that I play, but again, not going for Flora again, because I just don't have the card draw. Don't have the options.
It's a very solid rate early, but at this stage in the game, it's not what you want to play.
Yeah.
I really like Milk Cap, actually. I play this card, I think, a lot, just because it costs 1.
I agree.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but
it's a good early game card.
When you are already feeling like you're behind, this is not a card that's changing the status of the game, right? So you're playing. This is a role player, right? And it's actually the thing that I think is kind of funky about Earth is that you play so many cards that just sit there to do I'm a card in play, that I do like marginal things, I score marginal points, and you play a bunch of these mediocre cards so that you can play, like the terrain card that PJ was just talking about, 9 for 20s, or the cards that reward your streams, your like continuous things around the board, or the cards that care about how many red things your opponents have or something like that. You're dumping these like cheap, okay cards into play so that you can play some big whammy later, or at least that's what I did all day long.
Yeah. Definitely, like when I set up my board, I'm very much keeping in mind like all of the row terrains, all of the column terrains, all of the diagonal terrains, and all the adjacent ones. And I basically like anticipate like which ones are even out there still, and I'll look at how other people are setting up their boards. Like you can look at someone's board and be like, okay, they've played 2 mushrooms in a line. Decent chance they have the mushroom in a row card. So I shouldn't commit mushrooms to rows. I should commit them to like columns. So there's a lot of little things like that you can do to like kind of give you an edge, just anticipating like what might fall into your hand. But sometimes it doesn't matter because you just draw all the derpy like 1 and 2 cost cards that like don't really do anything at this point in the game, and you're just like rip. Yeah.
I think what you're describing is a little bit more galaxy brain than I approach it. My more simplified version of that is that like if you look at my board, which is impossible to see really at this zoom level, all the cards that have like very few terrains are at the top of my board, and the cards that have many terrains are at the bottom of my board. And the reason that I do that is to increase the chance that I like if I draw a terrain that rewards like a contiguous all your mountains or all your winters or whatever, that I can pull something together from that. I'm not setting up for the diagonals here because in this game you want diverse columns, and so I'm just jamming the columns through and saying, some games I will set up for diagonal if it's convenient, but I'm actually more inclined to just like make it so that my habitats kind of touch each other if the game doesn't really care. I really like when a game has some directional objective. The fact that this one says make your columns diverse, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's what I'm playing. Diverse columns. Like just follow that rule.
Yeah.
I actually think that's Galaxy Brain. I usually write off the 2 like in a line kinds of environment lands just because I think they're hard to make work. But because we have the 2+ habitat one, like this is the game to like make those work for sure. I think that's actually really smart on your end. And like you said, those diagonal cards aren't as good here. Column ones are basically worthless.
Yeah, saved my life in the semifinals.
Yeah,
I played for a stream thing, and I drew into it. and then like drew into a duplicate my opponent's red cards or whatever, and those two terrains were the game.
Yeah, I'm gonna start thinking about that, like putting the cards with more habitats in like one area and then like less habitats in another. That's like an extra thing to like try to throw in there.
I find it to be an easier way rather than like I'm going to manifest drawing trees in a column or something like that. Where it's just like, I'll just kind of jam these together. It costs me nothing to care about putting these habitats together. I actually do wind up making a small marginal error because of that in the course of this game that won't come into play. But I'll end up playing a yellow card later that I think goes better with the like contiguous thing, where I actually should have cared about the order of how yellow actions executed on my board, and might have changed to play. So it's interesting because this game is, like we've talked about, it's like RNG off the top of the deck, like you're hoping to get the good things, and there is a gazillion little edges you can get by playing this in the right order, by putting this in the right column. I think in about a moment we're going to see Damien, like you're going to make a play where you're like, I shouldn't have played that there. Or actually maybe you already did here, right? Because your board is 4 across.
Well, yeah, that was the
trefoil.
Trefoil, on the bottom left.
Yeah.
I mean, it needed to go in a new column because it was my 4th herb. But yeah, did it go on the left, or should I have shifted it over and put it on the right? I technically should have, but again, didn't matter because didn't find another tree.
Yeah, right. And so the tree matters because of his terrain that cares about like the orthogonal adjacency. So that like, we joked about this at the beginning of the game, that having these play mats with the 4x4 like could lead to us making some goofy choices. And that's exactly what happens to Damien here. And you saw me like a couple rounds ago, right? I shifted my whole board up and it felt ridiculous to do that, but I wanted the card at the bottom because of exactly what we were just talking about. I wanted all my many habitat things at the bottom and the other ones at the top. And it didn't matter, but like just, it costs me nothing, right? So like, why not give myself an out? So this is, I think it's PJ's turn. We're like in the tank for a minute here. Is that what's going on?
Yeah,
probably.
PJ's thinking real hard about some flora, I think.
Whenever I remember there was a stretch of like 5 to 10 minutes where I would count up to like 9 and be like, was that 9 or 10 or 9 or 8? And then I would go back. Basically, I was an old man at this point. Like reality had set in. I was like, is there any hope? I would count and recount, be like, maybe I miscounted. No, okay. So that's why there's some dead time here, just because I'm like trying to figure out like, is there any way out of this? Which probably not. But I was also just so exhausted at this point.
Yeah, it's funny because I think you at one point you were publicly counting like the numbers out, and I think one of us, maybe I confirmed it for you, but then another round later, you had went to plant and you were going to score them, and you were like, I reached over like, no, you only got 9 of those.
Yeah. I was in I had an interesting decision where Nick was at 9 on both at one point. I don't know if that's actually already happened in the game, but Nick had 9 on both of the fauna. And okay, we're there. Yeah. So I was thinking like, is there any chance he's only going to fulfill one of these? And then I was thinking about Damien and where he was positioned. And you had like 1 more on one and 1 less on the other, which I kept forgetting like which one was which added to the confusion. So I was trying to decide like which one to prioritize, because I had a card that had like 2 habitats. I had a card that was even, and I had to choose like which one, like which fauna was better to advance at that point, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so you end up playing Asparagus, which is a 0, and Mixed Forest here, which is a 4. That again leaves some mulching that, as Damien is pointing out, gets like left on the table. A little bit of extra points in terms of the columns. This is also a 2 habitat one. But yeah, I was because I had planted more cards in the driver's seat in terms of both the evens and the double habitat thing. So PJ was counting this, and I was just sitting there, happy as can be, twiddling my thumbs, ready to claim.
Because you had a card that did both. Yeah. Yeah. I have both of the green like compost cards from hand cards this game, which are in my opinion the 2 worst green abilities. And in this game, I really should have just given up on the Condor, I think. I think ultimately it cost me more points than it got me, like for sure. Like But I was chasing like good outs, I guess. I probably would have made like a little more points if I had started composting at this point. And maybe I could have baited Nick into like taking the yellow action and not ending the game as quickly as he did, which probably would have been worse for him if he had dragged the game out. It's not like for sure though. Yeah.
I will say that on the preceding round, I was considering leading into the Condors. Once I hit this 11 point here with the red grand,
you're gonna jam it.
Morale. I was like, this game, like I was like, I've got 5 slots left. I'm either taking 2 plant actions and you guys aren't planting, or I'm taking 2 plant actions and someone else is planting. Like this game will end in 2 more rounds for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that goes back to like the earlier like, do I take soil or do I take plant? Because part of the thing is if I take plant, that's one less opportunity for you to potentially like not plant, right? So that tempo is like really important, especially because you are the last player. You have the kill switch. So you having the most plant cards is actually really bad for me and Damien.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because you dictate when the game ends.
Yeah, usually third seed is bad, as we were talking about earlier, because you're behind on tempo. But when you seize tempo, then you're like absolutely in control, and that is definitely what happened in this game.
Mm-hmm. Am I finally done dirtling around, counting up and recounting?
Yeah, looks like you
got to run through your green actions here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I need to do better at these final tables. Is I gotta not just take forever and ruin the game. I was in a 3-hour Cascadia game like last year, which should be a crime, quite frankly. And I was definitely partly responsible for that. Yeah.
I played that video back at 40% increased speed, and I still was like, I'm dying. Play faster, please. Yeah.
So another slightly painful card for me to play, the Giant Sequoia. Again, it's odd, so it's not working towards my objectives. It does have 2 habitats, but it is giving me a lot of points because I did see that I have a lot of growth powers. I know I'm going to take yellow action next because I need more options, so I may as well get some points out of it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this card, Nick?
I mean, I normally despise it.
Same.
$8 for a card is so expensive.
Brutal.
But knowing that you're going to fill it out, you could read it as a card that really says 8 for 6 victory points, right? Because you get +5 on the growth thing there. So knowing that you're going to lead into a yellow action, and also just like, I mean, clearly what it sounds like you didn't really have options. Further, it's discounted. It matches your like get 2 things back. It touches a habitat that gives 3 bonus victory points for it. So there's a lot of little incidentals here that make this suddenly a much more feasible card that I would normally immediately throw in the trash can.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we see this, like, we haven't taken blue actions, and David's board is just full of spreads.
Yeah.
Spreads for days. Which means that, yeah, he doesn't need the soil, right? Oh, here we have another tectonic shift.
Yep.
Yep. The earthquake.
And again, the reason that I'm doing this one is because I looked at the flow of the stream and said that I wanted this card that I was playing over on the right side of the board. The only marginal thing that I didn't like about this action in the long run was that I could have put a yellow card that I think I'm going to play at the top of the board somewhere else for a better like flow action. But I ultimately decided not to take yellows anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But there's a lot to consider is the point that we're trying to make, and those things matter. Do you guys know what habitat or what terrain that is that I just played?
I can look it up. It was the column forest one. It's like mountain forest, I think. Let me double check that, but I think
there's a mountain on that card, so that sounds good.
Yep, it's mountain forest.
Cool. Let's show that. So I know I'm going to play a tree into this column. So this is going to be a 7-point card +1 for every time we're taking a growth action till the end of the game. It's again 2 habitats. So bam, bam. I claim the even. I claim the habitats. Puffin, Rhino. I knew that I was going to get them. I was just too far ahead in both of these races. So just putting the nail in those coffins. And as PJ is saying, in 3-player game, you're looking to claim 2 of these objectives first. And I just claimed 2 objectives first. And I have already the italics one, the colorful cards second. So I'm probably
huge
looking at
position right now.
Huge position, right? I'm looking at the most fauna scoring already at this stage of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty clear from this conversation that you guys sort of, saw this writing on the wall already.
Yep.
Was it around this stage, or would you say that it was earlier that you were like, oh, like Nick is grabbing this and running with it?
For me, it was earlier. Just because of my poor draws, and every single card after the fourth was just painful to play.
This was probably the final nail in the coffin. Like, it felt like a train wreck, kind of like in slow motion, essentially. I was hoping that maybe like Nick could only get one of these, and maybe I could like snipe the other. I forget if I was in range for that or not. But when you got both, I was like, all right, this is pretty doomed. Like at this stage.
Yeah.
I did not see a reasonable way to come back at this point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To add insult to injury, as I'm drawing cards at this point in time, I think when I do my next plant action, again, I like rip 4 off the top, and one of them is a colorful card. And I've already met the colorful objective, but remember, I am also scoring 9 for every 2 colorful cards at the end of the game. So it felt like the beats just kept coming at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
We all talked about how we didn't love our hands at the beginning, which actually like leads to an interesting game, but then I proceed to draw into good stuff and keep drawing into good stuff throughout the course of the game. You kind of imagine that like you'll have some good cards for a while, but like it just didn't stop, which is sometimes how this game goes. Unfortunately, like it was exciting for me, I guess, but it is kind of like a quirk of this game. So we see Damien here taking a yellow action, just in desperate need of cards.
Yeah. Getting my 13 points for the Sequoia that recovers me a little bit on the board, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That Sequoia points just like shooting up at it. You don't generally see someone be like, I have a Sequoia. Okay, now I'm at 8 immediately.
Yeah.
This is pretty fun.
Yeah. I was pretty ecstatic when you took this yellow action, because it actually started really putting me in range of like the Condor. I was like, okay, thank God it didn't decide to compost. Like, Condor is actually like a possible reality. But I also knew I could not afford to take the yellow action to get Condor. Like, I would just be way too far behind in tempo, which is probably why I should have just axed the plan from the start and just gone rid of all my cards with the green actions.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was another like definite small mistake I think I made in this game.
Yeah, I mean,
wouldn't have mattered
when you took yellow here, right? I draw 4 cards. I'm suddenly like, ooh, am I supposed to go for Condor? And the part of me that's like, get points, just get more points, like was screaming that I'm supposed to take the yellow action next. And I the most disciplined choice that I made this game is to take the plant action subsequently, which is what I'm supposed to do because I just need this game to end because I know I'm winning. And so I'm glad that I did that, but there was a part of me that was like, but I would get more points if I did this.
Yeah. You're like, I'm going to win, but could I get a high score?
Yeah, right. It's that like thing of like having some confidence of like, it's not that I need the most points. It's that I need more points than you guys. That's actually my goal in this game. And that's again, to go back to this like drum that we're beating about taking the plant action. The reason that ending the game is so powerful isn't just that I'm scoring the points, I'm hitting the objectives. It's that you're not scoring those points. You have those holes in your board. You're maybe not hitting the objectives because you missed a couple cards that you would have played that could have made these things happen. And in a game especially where we have these objectives, 10 plus puffin cards, 10 plus rhino cards, it's demanding on the number of cards you need to put into play.
Yeah, most fauna cards, like I mentioned earlier, favor just basically playing cards. There's relatively few that reward having good engines, like the ones that give you points for growths, or like you have to have 7 animals with growths on them. You have to have 4 animals with 3 growths. Like then there's all like the cube ones and all that stuff. But the vast majority of animals and ecosystems reward just having cards in your tableau to get the most points. Like Nick, you're the only one that scored 24 off of the different types of cards and columns because you're the only one with a full board at the end of the game. That's an additional 6 points on top of the 7 you get for finishing the tableau. So all of that stuff just adds up. That's why planting's so good.
Yeah.
There's one takeaway from this video. Plant like your life depends on it, because it probably does.
Yeah. I will at some point make a strategy guide about this where I'll talk about how you can play this game without planting. Because like I said, half the games I won in this tournament, I wasn't the plant player, and still did manage to win. So it is viable, but as default, if can plant, do plant.
Yeah. I was actually, when I was
on your fauna too.
Yep.
When I was talking to James and like trying to prep him for the Terraforming Mars semifinals, which I imagine will also be commentated at some point. But one thing that I think Levi mentioned that I hadn't really thought about was in Terraforming Mars, if one person is rushing TR and the other 3 are engine building, the TR player loses. So I wonder if that's possible for Earth, where is there a situation where if everyone but one person engine builds and only one person like rushes with plants, does it still shake out where the plant player wins, or does the engine building, like if it's good enough, like essentially catch up? Because I had an interesting situation in my... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think but my default assumption is that the problem in Earth is that planting is engine building. Like they're synonymous. Yeah. So it's very hard to say, right? In Terraforming Mars, you're taking on these roles, whereas in Earth, it's like one is the same. And so divorcing the two, I think, is the bigger challenge in this game. What was the situation you were talking about?
Oh, in my semifinal game, I hit Jeff with Extinct Volcano for the 3rd time he ran into it in the tournament and felt terrible. But it put me in a position where I was jamming the plant action, and they were kind of in a position to like basically run their engines more in the later game, because I wanted to end the game like more quickly. But they had some good engines, especially on like blue actions, for example. And they had to figure out, like, was it better to like plant even when my tableau was already full because I had some like good green abilities, versus do they just run their engines, give up on filling the tableau, and hope that their engines are good enough to compensate? Like, I do wonder if you have 2 blue players with really strong blue engines, is that an angle to counter like a plant player? Do you know what I mean? Because you're both incentivized to go blue to catch up. So that is a possible like situation to counter just planting, mashing all the time.
Agreed. I, in general, I think that players don't take the blue action enough as the end of the game is closing in, especially in 4-player games or the targeted 5-player game.
So whose turn is it right now?
At my turn, and I'm taking the plant action here. Oh yeah. We can see that the not fox but lavender fields have been assigned.
True. Oh yeah, fun fact, there's a lavender card in the game and it is not a color, and that makes me so annoyed. There's a couple cards like that where it's just like, this should be an animal or this should be color, and it's just not, and it makes me so Yeah,
they do mention it, I believe, in the rulebook, maybe the FAQ, but they're just like, no, we're trying to make it balanced so that there's always 14% of all 4 of them. Which I think, well, why not just choose a different plant then? I don't know.
Yeah. Like beach rose, beach is location, rose is not a color. Like, okay, calm down there.
Calm down there.
Yeah, there's plenty of other plants on the planet. Could have chosen something else that... Yeah.
It's not like the game is that thematic either. Like, there's some, like, I'm sure the habitats they're in are mostly accurate, but, like, the abilities are kind of, like, nonsense, I think, for the most part. Like, it doesn't actually really have any bearing.
Yeah, it's a lot like Wingspan, and I'm like, yes, I draw egg. I make food.
Sorry, I'm looking for more cards to whinge about because they don't make sense. Oh yeah, rainbow is not a color. Rainbow eucalyptus and rainbow plant, they don't count as colors. I guess rainbow is too many colors. Ugh.
Yeah, is rainbow a color?
One of the things I liked about you playing the Herowan or whatever is that, like, it rubbed a little bit of respect for me on these, like, rainbow cards, right? Like, in general, these rainbow cards, like, tend to just be so awful. They're just so expensive. This is actually one of the better ones. I think.
Rainbow Plant? I don't like Rainbow Plant very much. I think this one's not great. Yeah, it's passable. I agree on that.
Yeah,
I'd
the rainbow cards in general are just so dangerous. This one's actually starfish, good too.
There's Starfish Fungus and Bald Cypress. They let you remove a card from your compost to get a soil. Those ones are pretty good. But I agree. Outside of those, like, they're usually pretty middling or bad.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, Starfish Fungus might be my favorite one because it's like cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, that and Bald Cypress is very similar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, the ones that cost a lot. To me, I have this suspicion that there's something in the like algorithm of these cards. This is not a rainbow card that like really overvalues cards that have high growth spaces on them for some reason. And as we were just like talking about, I think that like most like growth cards are they're tricky because it's not easy to get growth unless you're taking the draw action. You're ideally not taking the draw action because it doesn't move the game towards completion. All it gives you is options, but it doesn't give you economy. It doesn't give you like moving towards the end of the game. And so taking the growth action is just very tricky in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say the growth action does give you pseudo economy if your hand is full of like really high cost cards. Because if your only option's a 4-cost card and you draw into 1-cost card, that's like gaining 3 soil in a sense. If you would rather play like the low cost card.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. Like they actually have the spreadsheet public for how they balance the cards. This game got a lot of flack in our like Discord because the designer said this game is like perfectly balanced, and then we played it competitively. We're like, it's not. Because in part, like you said, they probably overrate like the growth values, but they also definitely overrate, I think, engine building like in the game, because knowing what we do now, planting is typically the best thing to do. You just want to jam it as much as possible. They probably like overweighted engine stuff and underweighted just like the green abilities in particular, I think. But yeah, no, that Google sheet like exists, and I haven't looked into the calculations. They have like specific things like, oh, if the card has like a color that's worth like 0.34 value or something like that. Like they take all the different factors for like what fauna they score for into account and create this really complicated algorithm to try to balance everything. That's what the designer was saying when everything's balanced, but the starting assumptions are off, ends up not being as balanced as you might have hoped.
Yeah. I mean, this is this thing where it's like math doesn't necessarily meet contact with the enemy or whatever. I play Pink Tulip here, which is normally a card that you're not excited for, but it's pink. And
it's a color.
And it's free for me because I can play these for discount, and it's plus points because it's next to my pasture, which fit perfectly into my slot. Like Damien, I remember at this point looked over this card and he's just like, and it fits next to the pasture too. Like
it's with the mountains. I'm like, how are you drawing colors and it fits with the mountain ecosystem?
Yeah.
It's just
Were you at 6 colors at this point, or are you still at 5? I think you're at 6.
Well, I also believe I didn't play this, but I had Roman Brown in my hand. I'm trying to figure out what that yellow card is that I played there. So I don't think I had 6, but I knew I was getting to 6. Like the plan was I'm going to 6 from here. I
feel bad for you, Damien. In my hand, I had a bunch of yellow, like colored cards, like the italics ones. And I was like, well, I have no use for these. And now Nick can't get them. And then Nick just got the rest of them, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
You were starved.
Silver leaf, which is
I definitely gave up on the color. Like if I draw them, great. If not, just go for the other two.
For sure.
Which unfortunately I was trying to go for both, and Nick ended it too quickly.
PJ, I can't quite see what card you played because I think it's in the bottom row there, cut off by bottom of the screen.
It may have been Rainbow Plant, or maybe that was last round.
The card I plant is finally a good card, Circumpolar Barren Land. A little expensive, but I get a bit of a discount because it's cold. Finally get some draw. It's an even. But yeah.
Yeah. Arguably one of the best cards in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. This card's really good. Oh, PJ, you said that you thought Extinct Volcano was number 2. What's card number 1?
It's Fertile Rainless Land. It's the one where you can't take the blue action, but you get 3 cubes. So Volcano is the best turn 1 you can do, because the problem with the other one is you have to have a plant as well. And having 8 soil and another card to plant on like your first action, that's like a tall order. So Extinct Volcano is usually the only one you can realistically get down as your first turn. But I think Fertile Drainless Land, or whatever the card is, that one, it gives you 3 cubes every time someone takes a plant action. So it's just insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that card, Extinct Volcano, they'll easily get you 30 or 40 points by the end of the game by themselves if you play them early. Yeah. Like they're nuts.
Yeah, both of those cards should be worth 0 points as their base.
Mm-hmm. I would still play them if they were worth 0 points.
100%.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Circumpolar is the worst of the 3, and me and you and I, Nick, we talked briefly about should these cards be banned. I would ban the top 2. I don't know if I would ban Circumpolar. It feels like not quite as busted as the other 2 to me.
Agreed that Circumpolar is the weakest of them, but they're all good, and I'm happy to play them all anyway.
Oh yeah, definitely still happy, but it's not like if my opponent plays Circumpolar Barren Land turn 1, I'm not like, all right, game's over, I'm going home. It's more like, okay, well, this is an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're entering the final round of the game. Obviously, both PJ and Damien know this at this stage. One of the kind of interesting things I think entering this round here. So Damien's got 5 gaps. I can't see PJ's board, but I'm going to assume that he also has 5 gaps. Looks like.
I think yes.
I think PJ has 1 tempo, but yeah. Oh, I think he plants and then he gets 1 tempo ahead of me. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the curious thing here is that if both of you choose to plant, right, that
you choose whatever.
You each put 3 cards into play, but means that I do not need to plant as my last action, right? If one of you plants, that person gets to put 3 cards into play, or ultimately will get to put 3 cards into play, but my last action will be this awkward single plant thing, which I for sure would do. And I think at this stage, you guys know that that's what I'm going to do. Like the only thing I'm interested in is ending the game because of my position. So is that something that you guys were considering here? Like whether both of you would plant or I'm just curious what was going through your mind and how can we close this gap knowing that this game is going to close out?
Yeah, so as first player here, I think I plant almost every time because the odds of this going beyond this round is basically 0%. So from my perspective, I want to get as many cards out as possible. I always plant here. And then I force Damien to make the awful choice of, do I plant and let Nick end the game there, or do I take another action that maybe gives me more advantage? But I definitely wanted to lock in the extra card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I definitely didn't have the cards in hand to plant again here. So, again, just a whole game of not drawing what I need.
If you did have 3 viable cards to plant, would you choose plant action next?
Yes. I still have the columns that I need to fill out. My ecosystem, the other, There's a lot of points in that planting that I don't mind you choosing probably blue, maybe yellow to. I still have enough of an engine, definitely in yellow, not really in blue, but I would rather have my points on the board rather than whatever action you're taking.
Yep, I think because this game specifically rewards so much placement in the infrastructure there.
Makes sense. And Nick, you didn't really have a very strong point engine. So honestly, him taking a green action there wouldn't even be that bad. Because I think most of your stuff at this point gives you soil, ironically enough, because you were so starved for stuff that did that early on. But not a whole lot of point generation at the end there.
Yeah, that's true. I have a board. I'm just playing cards for playing cards, right? For their sake mostly. So my points are mostly generated from those goals, from them just existing. I don't have, I can run a blue, I can run a yellow. You know, there was the question here of, can I get to 20 for that condor? The answer was no, even if I got to take a yellow action. I think we were all very, very aware of that at the time.
Mm-hmm. I think this is where I claim, was this the second or third fauna?
You finally get the
third.
beetle there.
Yeah.
She missed it last time, and now you have the beetle.
Yep. There was a question in my mind if you end up like going for the condor at this point, I think. Like, I do remember thinking, like, if I go yellow or something instead of this action, like, how likely is Nick to do it? Actually, I was holding the wildfire card in my hand. That's why I was considering. I was like, does Nick ever take yellow here and then snipe the condor with, like, an event similar to wildfire? So that was, like, what I was thinking, and I decided to play it before your final turn. Just because sunk cost fallacy, at this point I had to get the condor because I already given up so much value, like, deciding to go for it. I just had to close it out, even though the event by itself cost me 10 points. Condor got me 15. So
yeah. I mean, that's strictly a positive value, and if possible, you want to be doing that earlier so that you can go ahead and mulch cards from your hand. Why does wildfire cost 10 points?
So it costs -4, I believe, and you pay 6 cubes to activate it. So it's effectively -10. Yeah,
of course.
Yep. And I was hoping for, again, like, just god draws to maybe give me a snowball's chance of winning the game. Like, Monsoon would have been insane, but didn't come.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I know I practiced this game when they announced it. Like, the first time I played it was when they said they were going to play it this year, and then I played it a bunch online. Mm-hmm. PJ, is your story the same, or had you played this before?
No, I started playing it, I think, October of last year. So, like, right after the last WSBG. The schedule was rough for me. I was like, which game am I going to play? I guess I'll try Earth. Like, it seems okay. And then it really grew on me. Honestly, legitimately really like Earth as a game because I like these kinds of, like, point salad-y kind of games where there's just a million things to keep track of. Like, Cascadia is kind of similar where, like, you're constantly, like, pulling between, like, different directions of, like, okay, I could get points here, here, here. Like, what's the best way to kind of, like, forge my path through doing that? So I really like Earth, but I think it's better almost as a casual game than, like, as a super competitive game, just because of how much variance plays into it.
Yeah, I think that's legit. Damien, I know you haven't played quite as much as we have, but you chose this game. What put you on Earth?
I think I just didn't like the other 3 games that day. So I'm like, it's Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I've played it before. I'm okay at it. May as well. Plus, there's that free play mat we got. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What were the other games this day?
It was Dune, Acquire,
Azul,
and Azul.
Oh yeah, that's a rough day.
Yeah, definitely.
Jeez.
Yeah, I've never played Acquire. I've only played Dune once, and I don't like the hey, here's my trap card. Oh, here's my trap card. Oh, here's my trap card. I despise those games. And then I'm Azul. I'm terrible at it. Casual, I'm terrible, and I've never played it competitively. So yeah, I would definitely get knocked out first round there.
Yeah. This tree that I'm playing here was sort of a surprise to me.
The last color. Yeah.
It was another color. I'd originally planned on playing a different 6-cost tree, the, like, Bao tree that, like, gives you the extra growth tokens or whatever, and then playing something else. But I actually, wound up, like, counting it out. It was like 1 or 2 points different for me to play this tree and something else rather than that tree and a colorful card or something like that. So that was something where, again, I didn't need the little edge, but continuing to pay attention as I drew 4 cards and looked at cards that I, again, would normally never play because it's a 6-cost card worth 4 victory points or something like that, which is, like, not where I want to be at the end of the game. I want to play some, like, big wombo combo terrain, or I'm trying to close out the game. So I don't tend to be rich and play a medium card at the end. But in this game, because of the specific scoring circumstances And that is, while I agree with PJ's statement, like this is probably better as a casual game. From a competitive perspective, it rewards you for firing on all cylinders constantly throughout the game. Every time you're looking at cards, considering, I have a heuristic for how good this card is. We mentioned Terraforming Mars earlier, or Wingspan earlier. Like, what cards are good or bad. You might even know, like, oh, in Wingspan, this bird is good at the beginning and bad at the end, but there don't tend to be many other particular circumstances. But because Earth has 7 scoring conditions, cards that care about your other cards in your tableau, like the constant paying attention is a very real skill in this game.
Oh yeah.
First blue action and only blue action of the game here.
That's a trend. Yeah.
Yeah. I was, I believe, 2 away from the beetle and 2 away from the puffin at this point. So I was like, I didn't have the cards in hand to play and get both of them. But I think even if I did, the card that I eventually do end up playing scored me more points, the Glacier.
Oh, yeah.
That was a sick play. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I want to add is that, interestingly enough, I think blue is the least taken action in Earth. Like, I think if you go to global stats, you can see like how many times on average each action is taken for just all the Earth games in the database. And blue is the least by a good amount, which, Nick, you talked about earlier. People really sleep on blue as a good soil generation thing. It's better than red outside of turn 1 when you don't have like the cubes for it. So don't sleep on blue. Actually, sleep on it if green is the thing you're thinking about. Then think about blue.
Yeah. Do you need to rub some respect on Damien, because he was carrying the banner just as hard, if not harder, for blue action here. So I love to hear that, because I do think it is. I do think it is an underclaimed action. I really want to play. This circumstance doesn't come up often, but like where you have kind of like a sus second seat, and you play a card that has 6 sprout spaces on it, and then you play blue as your second action, 6 sprouts, and like that does some really cool stuff because it gives you a lot of cash. Players almost never play blue cards as their first card in the game. And so if you do know that you're playing a blue card, like you can generate a ton of advantage early by just kind of like going a little bit sideways from other people. And then other people are going to want to like plant, but you're going to be rich so that you can like double plant on the subsequent turn. So I've been toying around with that as an idea, but you really do need to draw into the right cards to make that work, because needing those 6 spaces obviously is important for taking the blue action.
Yeah.
Game is slow to a crawl. Again, it's probably me thinking, I'd imagine.
Yeah, although we're taking a blue action here, so you're debating whether you need the two soil, I think.
Oh yeah, that's probably it.
Versus the 2 victory points. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I one thing I respect about both of you guys, I think all 3 of us sitting at this table are like, Nick's gonna win this game. He's ahead on points. He's gonna close the board. He's getting the 7 bonus there. Looks like his objectives are being met and everything like that. So just it's pretty clear, and you're still scrabbling for the last couple of points that you can get, because it can be hard. I think that people can underestimate their circumstances in this game. I'll tell you that, like I mentioned 2 of my games, I was not the person who closed the game, and I had 3 holes. The closest game I played was my first round, and I did not think I was advancing.
Dang.
And so we played it out. I was like, all right, and like we're about 2/3 of the way through the game. I was like, I think I'm toast. Like I can't keep up in tempo. But I, just like you guys in this game, was like, all right, I'm gonna just keep trying to score the most that I can, and figure out where I can get my edges. And then my opponent laid down a glacier actually, and I was like, oh no, that's it. That's the end of it. But I had, what's the other, so the glacier, for those of you, so we mentioned it a couple of times, I should throw it on the screen actually. Is the card that Damien's about to play. This is what I was talking about earlier. I love these cards. This is my jam. This is, let me zoom out for him a little bit, but.
Well, what I'm hearing is that your opponent played it against you and Damien played it against you and they both lost. So maybe maybe it's not that good.
Yeah, maybe I'm overhyping it so that people well, this game did win me my semifinals. So actually Glacier exactly was the game. But the thing that I played that fixed it was the guy that copies your opponent's winter stuff. Taiga?
Oh, Taiga, yeah.
Yeah, so I just played this it costs a little bit extra, but I get to copy what they were doing, and this doesn't care about the contiguous nature. So the fact that they had winter on both of their climate and island card, so insultingly, I ended up scoring more than they did off their mega awesome terrain they set up for all game.
That's how it be. Costs 4 more, but it's so much more flexible.
Yeah.
You also get the bonus from your climate and island too. So I think those are stronger. I might be sleeping on those like continuous line ones, honestly. I have to try that out more.
Maybe I just really like the satisfaction of like drawing the
oh yeah, it is so satisfying. Yeah.
It's very real. So are you guys are you leaning towards playing Earth next year again?
We're in the same boat where it's on the same day as Cascadia, so we'll see about that. It's tough because I won Cascadia my first year, but then I got second in Earth this year, so there's a good case to be made for both.
Sure.
Honestly, yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I think PJ's video he made out there kind of hosed the field on Cascadia.
A little bit.
Juiced everyone up.
That yeah. Everyone knows like what's going on now.
Yeah.
Which yeah, I will hopefully be commentating the Cascadia finals. And from what I've heard, the Cascadia finals this year are wild. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Nick, I think you'll have a fun time if you end up casting that too.
I will for sure.
No spoilers though.
I've heard the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's I know that feeling, right? Of like you put stuff into the world and then you're like, oh, suddenly everyone's better. It's like, that's how it goes. That's community building for you.
Yeah.
And here I'll go 15th action, plant 5 for 5 plant actions this game.
Yep. And then
there were 6 rounds.
It was 6, yeah. So 6 for 6.
Okay. So 18.
We were both 3 and 3. 3 plant, 3 different. So, but yeah. Yeah. He who plants the most typically wins. I would actually be curious to know, like, what % of the time, like, the person who doesn't plant the most loses. I'd imagine it's not much, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I would be definitely very curious to learn that. It doesn't seem like a thing they explicitly track on BGA.
Yeah, they do track number of plant actions taken, I know, by, like, each player. I haven't really dived deep into BGA stats, but if there's a way to like pull data from it, I'm sure you could pretty quickly figure that out, like run a t-test or something. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not a stats guy.
Someone who knows how to run a website API thing or whatever, just do it on my games. Just go to my account, download all my Earth games, and tell me how many times I planted the most and I won because of it. That'd be enough to know.
Yeah.
There we go. Close.
I do build reports at work, but not familiar with
the
BGA.
card I played. The card I played right there was not a bad card for me for sure. It's called Indian Oyster. If you want to pull it up, it's a very good card to like close out the game. It wasn't quite the god card I was hoping for, but I can't really complain. It was a very good draw, like all things considered. Just solid amount of points. It's effectively worth 9 points on its own.
Yep.
He had for 0 because 5 EPs and then 4 cards into the compost. So those black cards are actually pretty good later in the game, especially the ones that let you compost from your hand to do it because it's just extra points.
Yeah. Composting from your hand is so good as a cost.
Yeah, I don't like the other ones where it's like, oh, you can pay the cost in cubes. Well, I'm losing points. I would rather just pay the soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. The worst of those being the English walnut.
Yeah, pretty atrocious.
Is that the one that needs the growth?
It needs the sprouts, but it's like you can pay 3 victory points for this 1 victory point card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it has a lot of growth spaces, as we've discussed. We think probably the growth spaces are a little bit overvalued in the game.
Yeah.
People closing out with their events here. Do you guys remember what the end score was?
Not close. I can tell you that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I've got them here. In fact, another thing I did was I didn't send this over, but yeah. So my end score was 149. PJ had 171. Nick had 216. But if you look at kind of the heat map of the running total, my board, once we stopped counting the board and we were getting to the flora and the public ecosystems, I was actually 11 points ahead at that point. So I had a really strong board with 3 open spots, but just couldn't find the cards to score on the flora board.
Yeah.
Wait, do you have like a thing? Do you want to share your screen? I can put it on here.
Here, how about can I put it in Discord and you can just share that maybe?
Yeah, for sure.
If that's easier. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, I forgot to take down the score from the final game. I think I was just so distraught. I was like, get me out of here. I'm done. I'm going to go
That is a completely defensible way of treating that.
Yeah. I think I just wanted sleep at that point.
Oh, cool. Yeah, here's
the bottom one. That's just the actions, yeah.
So so we've got here are actions. This is awesome. Thank you for doing this, Damien. This is great.
Yeah.
So soil, plant, soil, cards, plant, soil, plant, plant cards, plant, sprouts, plant. And then here we've got our I need to filter this differently. Hold on, let me fix this so I'm not filtering off the bottom. Oh, of course I did the top like a fool. Okay, there we go. Oh. Yeah, do that. Oh, I see. Here we go. Here's our heat map.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one to the right is kind of the more visually, if you can expand that just a hair.
Yes. Right. 300. Let's do less. 250. Yes. I'm aware my stream is still running. Go away.
There, almost. Someone else is in front.
Trust, I'm really good at this.
There we go.
Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, so you can see on the right-hand side there, so the more green you are, the more you are in the lead. So
Nick was losing at one point in the score. Holy shit, I did not expect that.
Yeah. So the at the bottom, so where I have the 0 at the bottom there, that is the end of the your board scoring. And then where I start to go to -4, that's where we start scoring the public ecosystems, and then the very bottom one is the flora. So
got it.
Yeah.
So the public ecosystems followed by the public goals are just like where you plummet downwards. But infrastructure wise on your board, you actually were ahead.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's super interesting. Yeah, really neat to look at. The running total going through. Yeah, and so like, looking at these scores comparing to what I see online, like pretty normal soil, like top like plant card victory point scores. I guess maybe like a smidge smaller than normal. Then PJ with his -8 from events is maybe a little bit more negative than I'm used to seeing for events.
For sure.
Yeah,
and then we have
pretty brutal.
This is probably like these are some combination
compost.
of. So
next one's compost, and then sprout, and then growth.
Yep.
Nick killed it on growth. You guys both did. 23, 24.
That pasture does all of its work, right? Like we were talking, I was talking it down, but all those incidental points, and I had like a lot of guys that were put 1 on here and they're worth 2 points. It adds up pretty quickly, right?
Yep. Yeah, and then that last one is the terrain. So my glacier jumps me way ahead there. I got 26 points. And then, my personal goal didn't do so well, and Nick killed it. 27 points, ridiculous.
Yep, insane.
It's absolutely absurd.
And then, public goal number 1. I couldn't finish my columns, killed me. Goal number 2, but we were all about even there, and then Flora at the bottom. Oh, sorry, Fauna.
Yeah,
really interesting.
Yeah, I outscored Nick on Fauna by like a decent amount, but I paid so much in advance to do it.
Yeah,
probably not even worth. Yeah.
Go away! I just want to go to the channel. Struggling with basic functions. Okay, now of course I'm streaming. There we go. Maybe that's better. Oh, we're kind of correct. Well, and I see multiples of them. I'm not fixing this. Okay, well, this was really cool. I apologize if it was painful for you guys to run through and see that. Although, Damien, this is your 3rd time watching this. Like, you must dig this process.
It was interesting. I was glad to watch it and know that, because like getting to the end there and seeing that I'm 60 points behind, that was just really depressing. I'm like, did I really suck that bad? And then pulling up that graph, and I'm like, oh, okay, my board was good. I just my draw was killing me there.
Yeah, fauna board is critical for sure. Like in Earth. Yeah. I don't know. The nice thing about this game was that Nick crushed us so badly that there's not really room for what ifs. Like, I'm not sure even if I had played a perfect game and made different decisions that I still could have won. I don't know. I don't think there were many worlds where I was winning this game the way it shook out, but I was pretty happy with the game I played.
I still think my blunder with the red action gave both of you too much tempo, and it lost me tempo. That I could have found some other card draw and recovered better. But
I wonder what this game looks like if you take blue there and I don't draw volcanic soil. Maybe I even still draw red gram or whatever, right? But I don't draw one of them or something, right? Like that extra soil on the plant action meant that I just wasn't concerned about anything for the rest of the game. And had that not been the case, I do wonder how this would shake out.
Yeah.
I did think it was a very good game of Earth, like all things considered. I much prefer this as opposed to like one of us getting like Extinct Volcano on turn 1. Like, I think this was a very like interesting game.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, no one running away with early green cards made it a lot more interesting. I think that's, to me, the least fun games of Earth are early green cards making someone just crush. I mentioned earlier that my least favorite, that the like italics and the bold are my second least favorite cards. My least favorite one is the green tree frog, because it rewards you for doing something that's already disgustingly good. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you guys both so much for coming on. This was like absolutely rad. Obviously, managing a conversation with 3 people is a different thing. It's very new, but it was awesome to see all the extra insights from everybody throughout the game. The amount of just kind of like the combined brain power applied to this relatively simple process is incredible. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I will probably be putting out like Earth strategy guides as well at some point. So if you want to check those out, it's bite-sized strategy guides. If you want to get good at Cascadia, those are the videos that are up there right now. But yeah. Is there anything you want to plug?
I'll drop it in the description below. Damien, you have anything you want to plug?
If you're ever near Salt Lake, SaltCon, great Awesome. It's not a destination con, it's just a regional con, but we have a lot of fun playing games. Not a big tournament thing, but just casual games. It's real fun.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and wrap there. Thank you for watching. I didn't throw the like and subscribe thing up this time, but, do the like and subscribe thing. Bye, everyone.